Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, Dustin Fox, Jason Lloyd, Tyvis Powell, plus, ba-da-da-da-da, you're loving him, Mikey McNuggets. And so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show starts now. Booyah!
Happy Monday!
Yeah!
Did you guys have a good weekend?
I had a great weekend.
Great weekend.
I took my son and two of his buddies to, we call it Comic-Con. It's actually now referred to as
it's Fan
the
Fest.
Fan Expo or whatever it is.
Like that. Yeah.
And at the...
now, there's some strange cats hanging out there.
No doubt. By the way, the conference center, or is it?
It's the convention center.
Convention center, not conference center. Is, I don't know, they've upgraded it, obviously. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's big. It's huge.
I was trying to figure out, it's so big. I was like, could you fit every person that lives in Cleveland in here at the same time? Because that's what it felt like.
In Cleveland proper, yes.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah,
because
you could.
we were just in the main room where this was going on, and it was bonkers in there.
Yeah, it's huge.
And
there's a lot more to the convention center than what you saw.
Because where we parked, we had to walk through kind of the rest of it to get to it.
It's a massive complex.
It was a fun day. The kids had fun. My son dressed up as Daredevil.
Is that a superhero?
He's a superhero,
okay,
yes.
I'm not familiar with all of them.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm sure he had the time of his life, right?
They had a good time. They got to meet the actor, I don't know if you guys know him, Giancarlo Esposito.
I know that name.
He's most famous for playing Gus Fring in Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We talked about him Friday on Channel 3, that he was going to be there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
He and the guy who plays Daredevil were the two highlights of the show.
So, in a sense, he got to meet his hero.
He did. It was cool, and we got a picture taken with him.
That's awesome. Good.
It was just bananas. And some of the costumes.
Would you say that the attendance was overwhelming, underwhelming, or what you expected?
I expected it to be busy, but he was even more crowded than I expected.
Yeah, because I asked some folks Friday how this is usually attended. People that go, and they're like, someone said, never underestimate the number of nerds.
That's,
and I'm like, really?
Yeah,
that's trust me. When you go, you'll see.
Especially on Saturday. Because we went Saturday, and it was just we got there like around noon on Saturday. And
cool.
It was through the roof.
Now, how long do you stay at something like that? A couple hours?
I had about 2 hours in me.
And you were gone,
And then we were gone.
2 hours.
I had to get home to watch St. John's lose. That's
what a disappointment. I felt your pain.
Yeah.
Was it me? I was half watching at the end because there wasn't a lot of drama.
Yeah.
But I did want to see, and I was getting ready to leave the house for dinner, so I was kind of coming in and out. But I really wanted to see the post-game handshake between Calipari and Pitino, and I think CBS missed it.
I shut it off as soon as the game ended because I didn't want to. I couldn't.
Did I miss it or did they miss it?
I don't know if they did or not. They exchanged.
They don't love each other.
Oh no! You're being kind.
They don't like each other. They didn't say anything post-game that was.
No, I looked at the comments. I thought maybe. But I wanted to see, was there an embrace? Was it just a drive-by?
I'm sure it was a drive-by.
I'm sure it was a drive-by.
But I don't.
That's probably why they missed it. It was probably a drive-by. Although, how do you miss? Like, you got to have one camera.
Yeah,
all you're
10
doing
seconds
is
left in the game. They're shooting free throws. Arkansas is. I'm like, okay.
One
car
on this
left,
coach,
car
one
right.
on this
I need you
coach.
to both focus
Yeah.
on the middle of the scores table, and I want this.
Yeah.
From 8 angles, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Now, it was interesting after the game, after UConn's loss to Florida, a camera that was positioned, not a CBS camera, that was positioned in the tunnel, must have been a cell phone video, caught Dan Hurley.
Yeah. What a petulant child.
Wow, I was shocked he went there. Now, listen,
I disagree.
He had a point, but you don't do that.
He is good for college basketball.
But Mike,
Because he says whatever comes to
but
mind.
he's been acting like a sore loser and an
I
ass all
agree,
season.
Bull. I
all
agree.
season.
No,
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything he in reality shouldn't say those things.
No.
He acts like an absolute lunatic on the sideline.
Yeah.
He's nuts.
He is also needed in college
Yes,
basketball.
he's polarizing.
I'll give you that, but here's what I don't like about it. Corey coaches track and field. I tell him all the time, you're their North Star now. You're their mom.
Right.
You're their dad.
Yeah.
You are their moral compass.
That's
Don't
right.
do anything that you're going to have to answer to later. Anything, including language, including like just the whole idea of what sportsmanship is supposed to be. I get that no one gets more pissed when they lose than me. But I learned a long time ago.
We've seen that up
you.
close and personal.
Yes, I don't like it. And that was in softball. Now imagine a playoff game in my baseball league, okay? And I have to fight with every single ounce of my natural energy to not be a baby.
It's hard.
And I tell Corey, and he's young, he's 32, I'm telling him, you're the North Star for these kids. Dan Hurley's got to know that, too. He grew up with a father who was a coach. You're setting, and what he did was he stole some of Florida's joy while taking a massive dump on the entire officiating crew.
Yeah, that was weak. It was weak. I don't like it at all. But speaking of which, did you see the video was going around of this high school girls basketball coach who pulled the ponytail of the player?
No, I did not see that.
And he got fired.
Of one of his players.
The game was over.
They were lined up.
They were lined up to do the handshake. They had lost in the state championship. And he grabbed the girl's ponytail. No, in upstate New York. And he pulled her ponytail. And he apologized after, but he got fired.
I am all for tough coaching. Like,
I am too.
There's a line.
If you pull my daughter's ponytail, you're pulling me off of you. Like, they're pulling me off of you.
That's well said. Because I've always been that way too. I've told all of my son's coaches at the beginning of the season when you have the meet and greets, be hard on him. I know how you get the best out of him. It's to show disappointment in him. He does not want to Now, he's got to learn every kid. But I've always said, you go hard. But this goes without saying, you can never lay a hand on him.
Nah, that's it.
I mean,
and that doesn't even need to be repeated, but sometimes you do.
I got my face mask jerked, my head broke, the whistle on the helmet, and I wasn't even good. And I mean, I got mauled as a kid in football and all that, and whatever.
Different time, huh?
But that's I don't care. Like, if AJ screws up, you want to grab by the face mask and jerk, go ahead. But
I don't like that. I wouldn't be okay with that.
Don't cross the line where you're going to potentially injure him.
Yes.
And to get a kid's attention, like a face mask in football seems okay.
Yeah.
If you're jerking it around, I don't like that really. But
I don't break his neck.
You know what? Here's what I always say. Life is hard. This is why I advocate everybody should play youth sports, even if you're not athletic. And here's why. There's nothing in life that teaches all the lessons that you need to learn more than sports. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. You're going to have highs, learn to win with dignity. You're going to have lows.
You got to learn to deal with people you don't like.
You're going to deal with bad coaches. You're going to have a bad boss some point in your life.
You're going to have bad teammates. You're going to have bad coworkers.
Yes. It's just it's a microcosm of the real world. Because you're fitting into a group. And even if you're not an athletic person, there's so much to be learned from playing competitive sports.
But sometimes with the younger ages, there's coaches that are not qualified, and
it's
a bad situation.
No, 100%.
Absolutely. You should never put your hand on a kid. You should never humiliate a kid.
I agree with that.
Well, I think that I've listened to your coaching philosophies, and I know your baseball acumen, and I see how you father. And I've thought this before, and I've wanted to tell you this before, but I never had. I think you should give coaching clinics.
Oh, I don't know about that. But
no, here's why I say that. You've had a variety of teams. Perennial winners and teams that really struggled. But you've always emphasized one thing. We're going to have fun.
That's right.
And that's what it's about. And at the youth level, I wanted my 11-year-old son to win Rec Little League.
That's right.
But to scratch his competitive itch, he had travel. But a lot of his teammates didn't. It was just rec.
Right.
And I would look at the coaches and I'm like, these guys just need a 2-hour class. You need a license to go hunting and fishing.
I know.
It seems to me that you should need a license to be the moms and dads of our kids for 2 hours a day.
Absolutely. I always
start your own personal company.
To me, it's always about having fun, being a good teammate. I tell the kids there's only 2 things I will not accept: being mean to a teammate, and not trying your best. That's it.
And those
I don't care if you suck. Just try your best.
You're the coach's
and be
coach.
a nice teammate. That's it.
Start a consulting business. Give seminars. Go to leagues and say, I'll hold a seminar. It's a 2-hour seminar on Saturday morning from 10 to 12 before the season starts. Have all your coaches come. I'm telling you.
I got to get some more wins at Little League. I've won the fall ball championship. Not the Little League championship. We find out my team tomorrow.
Good luck.
I saw something a couple years ago. You know if you're a good coach if every kid signs up to play again next year.
And that's the short-term answer. You're right.
That was really good.
The long-term answer, I always ask this of coaches. How many of your kids do you still keep in touch with?
Oh, yeah. I see. When I see my kids that, like, some of them have aged out now, and every time I see them, I chat with them.
It's easier to keep in touch with people now, but I'll never forget one of my highlights of both playing and coaching Little League baseball. It was my son's Little League rec team. And he had a good mix of a lot of his travel team teammates were on that team, but he had a lot of kids that he was classmates with that just weren't good.
Yeah.
And there was a little kid by the name of Danny on the team, and he got like 2 or 3 hits all year, and his confidence was in the dumps. And they made it to the championship game. And they had rules that everybody's got to hit, blah, 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 blah. Well, it comes down to the bottom of the last inning. We're down 2, and he has to bat. Yeah. We have no other options. And he figured that out about the same time we figured that out.
Yeah.
And he came to us and said, Coach, if I get sick, can you put someone else in for me? And I said, you're not sick. You're going to get up there. And we didn't know what the spot was because this was an inning before. And I said, you're going to be a chance to be a hero.
Yeah.
And that was all I said. I didn't want to make too much of it.
Yeah.
I'm coaching third base. Bases are loaded, 2 outs. The other team thinks they have it. I hear the third baseman say, Danny sucks. He can't hit. Danny barreled one up into the opposite field and cleared the – well, nice. We needed 2. He got the 2 runs. Yeah. He got dogpiled, and I told him immediately after the game, I told his mother this too. I said, he'll live to be 100. He'll never forget this moment.
Right. I know.
Every time I saw – and that was it for him. That was the end of his athletic career. He never played again.
Yeah.
And every time I would see him, I'd say, you don't forget, do you?
That's
why you do it.
Those moments are the best. You always remember that. It's always great.
What was the highlight of your weekend before you jump in?
I went to the games on Friday over at Rocket Arena.
Yeah.
Really exciting games.
How was the atmosphere different? Everybody that went, I didn't. Everybody that went told me such a different atmosphere than a Cavs game.
Yeah, because you have people just rooting for whoever. There's not a ton of, there wasn't a ton of New Mexico fans.
Right.
St. Mary's fans, but the end of the St. Mary's Vanderbilt game was awesome. The New Mexico Marquette game was really exciting start to finish. So there was a couple really, really good games. A lot of fun. I'm glad it came. It sounds like everyone who came to Cleveland for the experience enjoyed the experience. I hope so. And it's a good showcase for a great city. So I was glad. That was probably the highlight of the weekend. But we got a lot to get into, guys, so let's dive right into our first topic today. After a quick word from FanDuel, March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. That is $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even picking who's going to cut down the nets. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. We have a winning ticket today from our guy Darren Smith, who won a 22-part same-day, not same game, but same-day parlay.
Kansas City Darren?
That is Kansas City Darren. He took the alternate and slid them all the way down on a bunch of these.
Wow.
He ended up betting $10 and won $405 on a 22-part same-day parlay. He slid all the alternates down, so he was over 3 rebounds, over 4 rebounds.
Okay. So he locked in his chance
playing the odds.
But still,
Darren
23.
Turned $10 into $405. So shout out to Darren Smith. If you guys have winning tickets, send them in here. We'll feature them on UCSS in the upcoming shows. But today we start with the Cleveland Guardians, guys, who made a ton of moves over the weekend. Steve, you can drop the ticket whenever you want, buddy. No, just drop the ticket. Let's start it now. The Cleveland Guardians made a ton of moves this weekend. They named their starting rotation. They made a trade for a former player, but we'll start with the Tanner Bibee news. They extended Tanner Bibee through the 2029 season with a club option for 2030. And Bull, in the group chat, you said this is a chance to be an absolute steal of a deal. Why do you believe that?
All right, I was stunned when I saw the money on this deal. There's like 1% downside and 90% upside on this.
I know that 91%.
Well, I know that, but there's 9%. It's just fine. You know what I mean? Like it's just even, equal side.
Right. Yeah.
First of all, let's look at the first 4 years of this contract, which are the years they already controlled him through arbitration.
Right. They only extended him for 2.
Right. So he's getting $26 million over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
That's $6.5 million per season for a guy who, if he's healthy, to me at worst he's a number 2 starter. At worst. At $6.5 million a year for the next 4 years. Okay, then in what would have been his first year of free agency, they're going to pay him $21 million that year. The only way that he wouldn't be worth it is if he had Tommy John or whatever, some devastating injury.
Right.
And then the final year is a $21 million option, which if they pick it up, team option.
Yeah.
Which if they pick it up, it means he's pitching well. So he probably would have gotten way more in free agency.
Right.
So this is an absolute steal. If it maxes out, he's going to get $68 million over 6 years, which is barely over $11 million per season in 6 prime years for a guy who, again, at worst, if he's healthy, is a good pitcher, could be an all-star, could be a Cy Young pitcher.
You said some things in there, if he's healthy.
Yeah.
And
you never know. That's just with any pitcher.
Right. You know. Well, and I don't know the data. I don't. Maybe, Jason, you do, or I think it'd be a great story if The Athletic could help you with the numbers. What is the percentage of major league pitchers having Tommy John today compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and whatnot? Anecdotally, it's up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, I think this is, you said the only way they'll pick up that last year is if he's pitching well.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that's the case, and here's why. What is the starting pitcher going to be averaging in,
that's true.
in 5 years?
Yeah.
20 million might be, that's okay. That's not bad.
Exactly. So there's almost no chance they're going to not pick that up.
I agree with that.
And there's almost, to me, there's a very little chance he wouldn't be worth $21 million, if not way more.
Right. I give the Guardians so much credit. When they do these deals, they're always fleecing somebody.
They're wins for the team.
Always. It's a huge win for the team. When have the Guardians signed a deal like this where you looked at it and said, wow, I can't believe they paid him that much? It's always the other way around.
Yeah.
Wait, Hosey signed for what?
Yeah.
Can I throw one question real quick?
The only one I didn't like was Straw, but whatever.
Would Jimenez fit in that category?
Yeah,
but kind of.
At the time, we thought it was fine.
Yeah, but the reason I think they went in on Jimenez, they had made the decision, this is who he is. They missed. He wasn't.
Yeah, right.
But with Bibee, I can almost imagine the conversation. His agent called him and said, it's a bird in the hand versus a bird in the bush. What do you want to do? He's got 2 very close friends that are cautionary tales.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
And that's what did it. He could have been left with Tristan McKenzie's situation. He could have been left with Shane Bieber's situation. Instead, he said, you know what? That's enough money for me to live comfortably forever.
That's right.
I'm going to take it. And he's going to hit free agency at 31 or 32. So he still has a chance, if he stays healthy and pitches as he has, to get the big cash out.
Sure.
I don't know this for sure, but I have to think we've talked about it before. The Guardians and McKenzie were hours away from signing an extension.
Breaks my heart.
And he's never going to get that money from Cleveland. And Tanner saw all that. Tanner witnessed all of that.
Yep, he was there.
I think that weighed heavily on the decision.
And Shane Bieber. Bieber could have signed an extension.
Yeah.
He rolled the dice. Tanner Bibee, without knowing him, I've talked to him a handful of times, without knowing him, I'm willing to bet if he took one of those financial advisor fiscal tests to see your philosophy on thinking, he is about as fiscally conservative as you can get. He had a pile of money there.
Yeah.
There was a pile of money next to it that was 3 times higher. And someone said, you can roll the dice and pretend and hope that you get that, or you can lock in your bet right now.
Right.
And he locked in his bet.
You know,
I'm good for him.
When we were talking about this last year, I said I don't fault the Guardians. I completely pivoted on this. I don't fault them for never signing another pitcher to a long-term contract.
I don't either.
And we even said, I don't think they'll do it anytime soon.
I didn't think they would. This is
They've
so
proven
good,
they don't have to.
Yeah.
But this is so good, you can't say no.
Like I said, there's no downside.
I mean, I looked it up.
Well, the downside is if he has a career-ending injury in April.
But
right.
Now that's a huge downside.
That's why I said 1%.
No, you're right. I mean, even if it is a setback and he has Tommy John and he loses an entire season.
It's all calculated risk. But I looked this up this morning because I was curious about it. We know Matthew Boyd and Alex Cobb, right?
Yep.
So Cobb got $15 million from the Tigers and made 3 starts last year. Matthew Boyd, in 10 years, has a career WAR of 9.7, and he signed a 2-year, $29 million deal with the Cubs. No. Bibee has a 6.6 WAR within 2 years. He won't get to $10 million until 2028. He won't make $10 million a year until 2028.
Yeah, I mean,
the other owners are saying, wait, he signed for what?
And there's a whole other component. Well, the thing I really want to get to is Framber Valdez in the last year was arbitration eligible for the last time this year. He signed for $18 million with the Astros, entering his last year. Right. Now he was the highest paid.
If he's healthy, he's going to get a huge contract next year.
Huge. Yeah. But my point is, in his last year of arbitration eligibility, he was at $18 million. Now, Bibee was entering arbitration next year. That's why I think this was the last chance for them to get this done.
I agree with that.
This was the last
that.
because by finishing second in Rookie of the Year, it sped up his arbitration clock.
Yep.
So this was the last chance. This was the last offseason to get something done.
You didn't get it done now,
or they were probably going to have to trade him next year because they usually trade guys with 2 years left, maybe one, whatever. So this was a critical point to get this thing done. And if you look at his option year is $21 million 5 years from now. Valdez is getting $18 million in year 3
right
now.
Yeah,
and that's a year later in the process.
And add in whatever the inflation rate is for major league salaries 5 years from now.
Yeah. By the way, if I were the Guardians, maybe they're doing this already. I would use this as an outline to offer Gavin Williams a similar length deal with even less money.
No, I don't.
He's got Boris.
And
he's got Boris.
And he shouldn't. No, Boris would never allow him to take it. Yeah. What's interesting to me, too, is I had a friend text me and said he knows his shoulders or elbow's going to go. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. There's no sign.
Which player?
Bibee,
okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that's what
Bibee's been incredibly healthy throughout
his career. A horse.
Yes.
A horse.
Yes.
And this person that texted me also pitched. And he said, Jake, you know when your elbow isn't right, but nobody else knows it, which is true. That's 100% true. But there's signs. And no one else is watching me as closely as they're watching him.
Right.
Every pitch gets a velo.
That's right.
Every pitch gets a location.
Spin rate.
Everything is measured. If there was any inclination at all that his analytics, that his metrics were dipping, Cleveland that would have been a red flag to Cleveland.
Sure.
Honestly,
he does not have any injuries.
Honestly, this is going to sound insane. This deal is so good. It doesn't matter if he has Tommy John and he misses a year and a half. It's still a good deal.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, even if he has to sit out for that time,
that's true.
It's a great deal. You don't want that to happen. You pray that it doesn't happen.
I mean, it's almost inevitable. At some point, more pitchers than not are going to have it. And you're going to miss time. You're going to miss 15 months or whatever it is. But it's sort of, and most of these guys, not all, but all of this is a calculated risk. Most of these guys are bouncing back as good as or better than they were before the surgery.
If he was to hit arbitration right now or free agency, what's his market value?
Right now in arbitration?
22-12, career record. I think it's 22-12.
Yeah, he would. So
I don't think this year would have been as high in arbitration as you think. I think he probably.
Yeah, just because of the nature of the
first
system.
year.
Yeah, okay,
but if he were a free agent, like.
I mean, again, Alex Cobb got $15 million.
And what did he do? What has he done the last 2 years?
Tell me, Mike, could you look up what?
12.
Could you look up? I wouldn't get this much, but could you look up what Max Fried's contract with the Yankees was?
Max Fried with the Yankees signed an 8-year, $218 million contract with a $20 million signing bonus. So, average annual salary of $27.25 million per year.
So I think Bieber, now Bibee, remember he's young, so he would have gotten. If he were a free agent this offseason, he would have gotten probably an 8-year deal worth in the 23, 25 million.
I completely agree with that.
If he were a free agent.
And so now consider this. And this is what the Guardians have to do if they're going to compete. Because they're not going to compete payroll-wise. Their best position player and their best pitchers are on as team-friendly contracts as you can imagine.
Yeah, their best closer, their best starter, their best hitter.
It's just they do it again.
They need
that front office.
You wonder if we'll see more pitchers do this because of the laundry list of injuries.
Yeah, because the fear of injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You know,
it's a personal decision. I think the agent has a lot to do with it. I've been told by players that the relationship between player and agent is very simple. The agent provides advice. The player decides the destination, the guidance.
I mean,
but not every relationship is that way. Some players just say, what should I do?
Especially with Boris.
Well, Bieber and Bibee are two very similar cases because neither was a high pick. They didn't get big money signing bonus-wise.
Yeah.
And
They were
making minimum.
developed.
And Bieber, I always said Bieber to me looked like a slam dunk extension guy. And he didn't want, they couldn't get it done. And
well, that was because he didn't want to do it.
He wanted to get it to free agency.
Right.
And now you see what happened to him.
Yep.
And he's going to make his money. Like, if he comes back and he pitches well this year, it's delayed a little bit than what he would have.
Sure, but he'll get it.
But he's still going to get his money.
Yeah, but if he comes back and pitches for 6 weeks and he's, pretty good,
Alex
but not
Cobb
great.
got $15 million off 3 starts.
And Cobb wasn't the pitcher Bieber was when he got hurt.
That's not the contract Bieber is looking for.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah. He might. I don't know that anybody's giving him a 5-6 year deal.
If he pitches his ass off, they will.
If at minimum this year, he's getting 3 for 75, 4 for 100 minimum.
I agree with that.
It depends how well he pitches.
I agree with that, and I think if he pitches well, that number goes up. Someone's always going to pay for it. It's pitching. It's frontline starting pitching.
But he's still
caliber pitching.
I'm telling you, the Cobb and the Matthew Boyd contracts I keep talking about.
But
they broke my head.
I know.
Not really. They shouldn't have.
$15 million for Alex Cobb.
Every decent pitcher is getting $15 million.
But that's what I'm saying.
But what I'm saying is that whatever we thought Bieber was going to get, he's not going to get now. Not what he was.
He's not going to get free. He may not get the free contract.
Well, here's the other thing he can do. It was a 2-year contract, right?
Yeah.
He has the option after 1.
Oh, yeah.
So here's what he could do. He can explore what he's worth.
Yeah, he could.
And if the body of work is only 6 weeks, and it kind of feels like that's what it's maybe 8 weeks.
Right.
If the body of work is short and the performance is mixed, he could always say, I'm betting on myself.
Yeah.
I got stronger as the year went on. I know that, but they don't. I'm going to come back in 26. I'm going to pitch for the Guardians, and then I'm going to break the bank in 27.
Yeah, that could happen.
Then he could get a free deal at that point.
He could get a huge deal.
Teams aren't scared off by Tommy John anymore.
Not anymore.
No, that's true. That's true. It's
like
just about how well he pitches. But in the end, this is a great move for the Guardians.
I can't give it anything but an A+. What about you guys?
I know people are A+. A++. I mean, and now people are saying, well, who could be next? A lot of people want Stephen Kwan.
That's not happening.
I don't think it's, although I don't know what.
Isn't he past that? I mean, he's so deep into it now. It's almost likely that he is going to roll the dice.
The thing with Kwan, though, is if he were a free agent now, he's not getting any big contract. You don't pay for singles hitters.
Well, no, he'll never get the
He wasn't a singles hitter last year. If he adds more on top of that, if he gets to 20 home runs this year.
You think he's going to get to 20 home runs?
Why
I don't
not?
see it.
How many did he hit last year? What did he hit last
He
year?
had 14 last year.
And he missed, 6 weeks with a hamstring?
Everybody hits 20 home runs in the big leagues.
Okay.
No, they don't.
But if he
if
he's hitting 3, I can't believe he didn't hit 300 last year. But let's say he hits 300 this year with 20 home runs and steals 30 or 40 bases.
That's a big contract.
That's a big contract.
And, Bull, the thing you're forgetting is he's an elite defensive
I hear you.
and he runs the bases well.
I just don't think he's going to hit 20 home runs. And guys that don't hit for power don't get paid.
What year was he arbitration eligible? What year is he going into? Is this year 4?
I think last year
this is year 4.
Arbitration, yeah.
If this is year 4, then he's into arbitration.
Yeah. I don't know. They probably, Gavin Williams, like you said, he has Scott Boras as an agent.
Boras. I mean, if Gavin Williams says, I want a deal, you have to do a deal or I'm firing you, then they'll do a deal.
Sure, but
the odds of that probably.
You don't hire
when
Boras.
You sign with Boras, when you sign with Boras, there's an expectation that you're going to hit free agency.
He told me, I talked to Kevin about this last spring. I said, do you approach them or did they recruit you? And he said he tried going with Boras and they wouldn't take him at first. And then when he went, where'd he go? He was in Vanderbilt. Where'd Gavin Williams pitch?
East Carolina, one of the Carolinas, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
Coastal Carolina.
After one of his really good college years, then they came back to him and said, "Okay, we'll take you." So there's a waiting list to get on the Boras.
Well, how did Austin Hedges get?
He went to East Carolina,
Boras?
by the way. Yeah, I was right. East Carolina.
Well, I don't know.
Hedges is a Boras client.
His brother lived next to it. Boris's uncle growing up. They were best friends, and he said, if your kid ever gets it, there's got to be some kind of backstory there.
The Guardians have made very clear through their actions they are not about this. We're going to sign guys before they prove it. There's a lot of teams now that are signing guys to major league deals before their first professional at bat.
But like Mike
they
said,
will not do
Jimenez
that.
was kind of an outlier, even though he had a good year.
No, I'm not talking about Jimenez.
Guys before they even play in the majors.
Yeah.
I see.
Like signing Bazana to an extension.
Right. Sign Bazana now before he takes his that's happening more and more, and they are not.
Well, we saw it with last year Colt Keith of the Tigers. We saw it with Jackson Churio. The Brewers.
And Manzardo, if he has a big year this year, then I think that they would have those conversations. But you have to produce for this organization.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But it limits who will take these types of deals.
I would try to lock up Manzardo if he has a good season.
Really
absolutely.
And the point I was making with Bieber is Bieber and Bibee were very, very similar. They were not high draft picks. They didn't have a big signing bonus. You would think
they blossomed after they were drafted.
You would think that they were obvious candidates to sign these types of deals. Shane said no, and Tanner said yes. And it's just personal preference, and it's risk and how much risk you're willing to absorb. So there's really no way of knowing who will take the deal and who won't.
Yeah. That's true.
Well, we're going to talk about the rest of the rotation after a quick word from Living for We podcast. What happens when a regular day at school turns into the worst day of your life? Unfortunately, that's a reality that happens way too frequently in today's world. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for young people in America, and in communities of color, the impact is even greater. Every bullet fired creates two victims, the person in front of the gun and the one pulling the trigger. Living for We, Keep Your Head Up is an award-winning podcast that focuses on real stories, real struggles, and real solutions in Northeast Ohio. New episodes drop every other Tuesday, including tomorrow, where you'll hear from host Marlene Harris-Taylor and her new co-host, Maisha Watkins, the executive director of the Cleveland Peacemakers. No one does a better job of bringing you stories from the front lines, victims, survivors, and those fighting for change. Each episode, they sit down with different organizations that are working to end gun violence and provide resources for those affected by gun violence. Listen to Living for We wherever you get your podcasts, or watch the video version on IdeaStream's YouTube channel. You can learn more at ideastream.com/podcast/Living for We. Subscribe today to Living for We on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, a new episode drops tomorrow. So with the Bibee news, we also got an official confirmation from Stephen Vogt about the Guardians' starting rotation this year. Steve, you take tag board full. This was Zach Meisel, who said the Guardians' fifth starter will be Logan Allen, but the ace, Bibee, the second, Gavin Williams, third starter, Luis Ortiz, Ben Lively, in the fourth spot with Logan Allen rounding out the top five. McKenzie starting the year in the bullpen. Jason, right idea to start with Allen in the fifth spot and McKenzie in the bullpen? Or in general with this top five, any issue with it?
No, I mean, listen, you're not going to roll with these five guys from now till September. There's going to be a lot. Joey Cantillo, I think, is going to play a big role on this team at some point this summer. You hope Tristan McKenzie will as well. He just doesn't. He's just getting hit too hard right now, and I don't think you can trust him. I totally get. Plus, they probably want to get one more look at Logan Allen before you decide yes or no, is this guy part of our future or not? So I would hope that McKenzie will get a chance to start at some point this year, but he's going to have to prove it. You sort of slid it in the last conversation. I agree. He probably should have had the surgery. That's the way it's looking 100%. That's the way it's looking right now.
It's still lurking out there.
Yeah, and he's never been the same pitcher, unfortunately, since. So he may still have to make that decision at some point this year. But, you know, you want good health, obviously. Slade Ciccone is another guy who you would think is going to make an impact at some point. There's going to be more than these five guys that start games for the Guardians. It's just the nature of the game. But, I mean, I have no issue with starting with these five. I kind of want to get one more look at Logan Allen, too. I don't think he's a long-term solution for this rotation. But, you know, you want to give guys a chance to grow and learn, and he's had some good moments, and he's been hit hard. And this may be his last chance to really prove that he belongs as one of the five guys on this team.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I always laugh when a team breaks camp and they say, here's our rotation.
Yeah. For the first week of April.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, go back and count, and you can do it on one hand, the teams in the last 10 years.
Oh, my God.
That have started the season and ended the season with the same starting rotation.
I don't know if it's happened once in 10 years.
It probably hasn't.
When they were the Indians, they did it that year Kevin Millwood was here. That
was a while ago.
You know what? Everybody did have freakishly crazy health that year.
They only used five starters the entire year.
I bet it's the only time it's happened.
It's the only time in my lifetime I can recall it happening with this team.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's happened in baseball before.
And like you said, Jay, I agree. There is something intoxicating about Logan Allen. His stuff, to me, doesn't equal his results. And there's a lot of pitchers, by the way, where I feel that way. But when I just look at his stuff, I feel like his ERA should be far lower than that. His whip should be way lower. It's good stuff, but he gets hit. And so I keep thinking there's just something more that's there that we're not seeing. And the Indians, by the way, have had a lot of pitchers like that over the last 10 to 12 years. Who was the kid from Vanderbilt?
Jeremy Sowers.
I thought he was going to be a Cy Young caliber pitcher.
Yeah, he had a lot of
Because again, I would look at his stuff and I'm like, my God, it's filthy. And I don't know if it's a lack of concentration, because in the big leagues, you have to focus on every single pitch like it's the only battle you're going to fight today. And some guys just they're not built that way mentally. And they drift. And then all of a sudden, and you can drift for three hitters and you just gave up 3 runs. You know, if you get a base hit, walk, home run, It's like there's no drift. And I don't know if it was with I thought Jeremy was going to be a great pitcher. I really did.
Yeah, he was like seventh. He was 7th overall out of Vanderbilt.
His stuff was just so good, and I'm not saying I don't have that high of a ceiling for Logan Allen in my mind, but he reminds me a little bit of Sowers because I look at his stuff and I'm like, it's there, it's in there. There's just something that hasn't yet been unlocked, and I trust the Guardians will find it because they always do.
You know, Jay, you know this as a pitcher. We talk about command, right? You look at his strikeout to walk ratio; it's terrible.
I know it's
less
awful.
than 2 to 1.
Yes.
So we think about command as being able to throw a strike, which is part of it. But the other part of command is where you put the ball in the strike zone.
100%.
Right? I mean,
There's 9 quadrants.
Right.
And there's one hot quadrant. Every hitter has a hot quadrant. You can't throw it in that quadrant to that hitter.
That's right.
So maybe I don't look at command as balls and strikes at all. You can have great command and get tattooed
you
every
can be throwing
day
strikes, but they're all coming right down the middle.
If you're throwing it in the 5 quadrant, you're done.
So that's something obviously is a part of his game that he has struggled with is command in the strike zone.
Within the strike zone.
You know, I like what they've done with the rotation. I've been saying since the middle of last year, let me see Tristan McKenzie in the pen.
Yeah.
And I understand, you know, the whole thing with the surgery, we'll see what happens. But I thought it was a positive.
His velocity's been consistently up.
Velocity's been up.
So that's a good sign.
You worry about him because he walks a lot of guys, and that's not really good in the bullpen. But you wonder if he can focus on just being a one-inning pitcher.
Yeah.
If maybe, you know, obviously the velocity will go up even more in theory, and maybe he finds it there. Remember, Carlos Carrasco looked like a lost pitcher.
You're right.
And they sent him to the pen. He dominated,
it changed
and
his
it
career.
completely turned his career around.
Yeah.
Not that there's a guarantee that'll happen with McKenzie.
Obviously, there's a difference here with the injury.
Oh, certainly,
But
there's other factors at play, but you never know what's going to turn a guy around. The guy, talk about good stuff. Tristan McKenzie's got great stuff.
For all the problems he had last year, he still had a great curve. So now, if you would think he could be a 2-pitch pitcher right now,
100%.
Fastball curve.
I would love for him to develop a change, though. I mean, I just think it would be such an advantage to him. Because the curve is a nice change of speed, but you see it coming. It's the second it leaves the hand. But some pitchers tip it before it's even out of a hand.
I just think you need to simplify him right now.
Yes.
Simplify his duty, simplify his role, and try and get him back on track. I'm sure he has much greater aspirations for himself than being a 2-pitch reliever.
Absolutely. But
So,
right now,
this is his reality.
I think at some point he's put off the inevitable. At some point, I just feel like it's going to go. His frame, I've said this from the first time I ever laid eyes on him.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I know.
He's a praying mantis. He has no chance to stay healthy.
It's tough.
And it's been
the only guy I've ever seen not have I can think of that
Pedro.
did not have the surgery, and no, Pedro for being thin, but the only guy I've ever
5'10",
seen
150.
that you thought he needed Tommy John surgery, didn't have it, still had a good career, was the Yankees pitcher. Tanaka.
Yeah,
that's the one
true.
everybody
And he
goes
wasn't
to.
as good after, but he was still good.
Aaron Nola, I think it was Aaron Nola, because Zach and I researched this when we wrote about
he
this
did
last
too?
year. Nola did too, and he was okay.
All right.
So I'd have
But it's
to,
rare.
But you know what? It's like the Adrian Peterson example in football.
Right.
He's a freak of nature. And
Yeah.
when he came back after ACL in 8 months and was just as good, everybody was like, okay, we got a new timeline now.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You had a freak of nature who genetically was a fast healer and was so ridiculously strong to begin with that it didn't knock him off his perch.
Where the tear is matters significantly.
Does?
We did the story last year, and off memory, I don't remember all the details now. But you know, not every case is the same.
I think the preference, I could be wrong, is away from the bone.
I think the lower, the better.
Yes.
I think I'm going off memory, but I think the lower, the better.
I think so too, because I had those discussions when I wanted to know where's mine, and I do remember that there is a preference, and I do think it's further away from the bone is better. If you think of a rubber band and it's connecting 2 parts, and it breaks and you need to fix it, if it breaks in the middle, you can pull a little from each side and bring it together. If it breaks towards the end, how do you reattach it to that with the same, with the same level of strength?
Yeah.
And that's why I do think it's further away from the bone is preferred. Here's the thing, and this is me trying to be an eternal optimist. If Logan Allen is my 5th starter, and I have Tristan McKenzie coming out of the bullpen, knowing that the back end of my pen is ridiculously talented, I'm okay with that. Every rotation has something that you hold your breath on.
Yeah, I would actually argue that their entire pen is very talented. Top to
Yeah,
bottom.
it is. I mean,
and that's with starting a couple of
it's still the strength of their team. To
yeah,
me.
you got a lot, and that's with Ciccone starting the year on the DL and Stephen starting the season on
When
the
does
DL.
Stephen come back? Do we know? Is he a June middle of the season?
I can't remember exactly what the plan is for him, but they added the veteran Seawald. I mean, they've got a lot of talent in the pitching staff. Luis Ortiz, who they acquired, had a terrible spring training, but I don't worry about that as much.
He's
but
a young guy with great stuff. He struggled before.
I had him on my the reason I was so locked into him is because he was on my fantasy team last year.
Oh.
And so I watched a bunch of his starts with the Pirates. Otherwise, why am I watching the Pirates? But every time he pitched the second half of last year,
there is one
very
other reason
impressed.
to watch the Pirates.
Yeah,
but not when Ortiz is pitching.
I mean, he dominated the Guardians in that start he had.
Yeah, I bet his strikeout to inning the second half of last year was way better than it was for the full season, because it seemed like he was getting a bunch of strikeouts late in the season. But Lively had a tremendous season for the Guardians. They're counting on him to be solid. They don't need him to be spectacular.
I wondered if there was any bruised egos with the playoff roster and the way that played out.
I would think the guy's been a journeyman basically, so I think he's happy just to have
I don't think
if he does again this year what he did last year and they get to the playoffs, I think he's going to be on the roster.
But he was faltering down the stretch.
Yeah,
he
got tired.
He did what he thought.
But
they
man,
had to
did
do.
he overachieve?
Again, as Zach and I were saying yesterday, and I think I referenced this last week, just the possibility of Bieber, Bibee, and Williams all pitching their best in September. The Guardians could be dangerous in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
If that's it's a somewhat big if, especially with
there.
Bieber. But
tell our audience the stat that you were telling us when we were starting the show. This is mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, so Fangraphs is a great website, and they use analytics to come up with standings and stat predictions for individual players. They have Zach and I were just talking yesterday. That's the reason I looked at it. That we think the American League is completely wide open. Obviously the White Sox are terrible. The Angels and A's are and everybody else is good, but nobody's great on paper. Fangraphs has every team in the American League besides the White Sox predicted to win between 76 and 86 games. And I believe if you take out the A's and the Angels, I might be one of the team. I believe the other 12 teams besides the A's, Angels, and White Sox are all between 80 or 79 and 86.
Insane.
They have all the American League East teams are within 6 games of each other. All the Central teams besides the White Sox, I think, are within 5 games of each other in the predicted standings. It should be some great races in the American League.
The late former commissioner of the NFL, Pete Rozelle, would be doing cartwheels over that. He wanted mediocrity.
Oh yeah.
He wanted everybody to be 8-8.
I could make a case for 14 teams in the American League making the playoffs, in my opinion.
When was the last time that was the case?
And I could make a case for 12 legitimately making the playoffs. I think the A's and Angels are a stretch, but 12 legitimate teams making the playoffs this year, potentially.
Insane.
All right, we'll get back to the Nolan Jones trade in a little bit, but we got to talk about those Cleveland Cavaliers first. Before we do that, a reminder, this Friday, the time has come. The comedy show is here this week. There are still limited available tickets. If you haven't got your ticket yet, make sure you get your tickets. Come hang out with us on Friday night at Hilarities. We've got a ton of responses from you guys who watch every day saying you're coming. We can't wait to hang out with you. We can't wait to laugh with you guys. Going to be a great night. We'll see you on Friday at Hilarities at 9:30.
So who performing from the show? Me, you, Steve, Director Steve,
and Anthony.
Is that
Correct. Yes. Unless G. Bush changes his mind for a third time. He's going back and forth, snip, snap, snip, snap.
I can't wait. It's going to be
Michael
fun.
Scott.
Why would G not do it?
He didn't want to do it for whatever reason. I'm not sure.
We don't have to get into it
now. Is it fear of bombing?
I don't know.
We'll talk. He's not here. We can talk about it tomorrow. All but let's talk about those Cleveland Cavaliers. It was a 4-game skid. If you just looked online, you would think the world was ending.
Oh, yeah.
And then they played the Utah Jazz yesterday and dominated the Utah Jazz, despite the fact that the team once again struggled to shoot. Donovan hasn't made a 3 since Wednesday. Crazy. Darius did have a little bit of a better, more efficient shooting performance, but still not up to the standard we have become accustomed to at Darius. But the big picture, Jason, the 4-game skid is snapped. How do you look at the win, knowing they beat a Utah team that doesn't have a ton of incentive to try that hard right now, compared to the fact that the Cavs, once again, didn't shoot that well from the floor, especially from three.
I wasn't terribly concerned during the losing streak. I'm not going to do backflips for hammering Utah, a team that they should hammer. They should have hammered the Suns previously, and they didn't. Listen, yes, they're in a shooting slump. No, they're not shooting well. I have a really hard time believing Donovan and Darius are going to be shooting this poorly a month from now. That's why I can't get that worked up over it. It's the end of March. A lot of teams struggle around this point. It's not that big of a surprise. I think it's a good thing that some of those things were taken off the table that we've been talking about all year, like 70 games. You don't have to worry about that. Just go out, just work on building good habits, work on rotations. I saw Kenny say over the weekend, like, hey, listen, the worst thing you could do is play desperate right now. We don't have to play desperate. We just have to be who we are. We're a really good basketball team. And he's absolutely right. So just chip and putt your way through the end of the season at this point. I don't really think that there's anything major. This team is who they are. And we have more than enough evidence to prove that this is a legitimately excellent basketball team with a really good chance to win a championship. So from now till the end of the season, you can ride whatever, you can talk about, we can dissect and pull it apart. The fact is, this team, I think, is at the point where they're just waiting for the playoffs to get here.
I have zero concern. I'm with you. You talk about the evidence. What's more likely? They're the team that played the first 65 games of the year or the team that played the last 5 games?
Yeah.
Yes, they're playing crappy basketball right now. Yes, Donovan and Darius can't shoot. Those guys have track records of being able to shoot as long as they're healthy. As far as I know, they're healthy. So eventually they'll get out of it. The rest of the games don't matter. They're still going to be the number 1 seed. Yeah, they're going to probably lose the top overall seed to Oklahoma City, which would only matter if they played them in the finals. If we have to worry about that, we're in good shape.
It's a good thing if we have to worry about that.
In the finals. I think they're going to be fine. They're going to play whoever they play in the first round of the playoffs, and I'm very confident they'll get right then. It's hard to play great basketball for 82 games. They did it for 65 games, and now they've played lousy like every other team, except for maybe Oklahoma City, has done at stretches this year. I get again, I think this all goes back to the way the playoffs have ended the last couple of years, especially the way they played against the Knicks 2 years ago and the way they played against Orlando last year. And so there's the nervousness that comes up because there's part of you that maybe thinks they're fraudulent. I don't buy that at all. I'm not worried at all, and I think all will be right. This regular season cannot come to an end soon enough.
Yeah, I agree with that because you're also holding your breath about it with injuries.
Yeah, right.
These games mean absolutely nothing. The last thing you want to see is a colossal injury that ends the season for one of the anchors to this team. Consider this fact. 50% of their losses have now come in 2 7-game in a 4-game stretch and a 3-game stretch.
Right, yeah.
That's half of the losses they've had on the entire season. There are things that I'm seeing that I don't love, so I can't say there's zero concern. Because to say there's zero concern, you have to not see a dramatic dip in the. I don't know what it is with Donovan's shooting right now.
Yeah,
I know
really
shooters
bad.
go through slumps, but this is an extraordinary slump that has now stretched 3 games, 4 games. I don't love that.
5 games.
5 games. I don't love that. But like I think Bull said it or Jason won, it's not like we don't already know this dude is a shooter.
Right. Yeah.
So, and shooters shoot and they go through slumps. Mike, you know that as well as anyone. Sometimes the hole looks like it's 3 times bigger than the basketball. And sometimes it looks like there's no way that basketball is going to fit in there. And right now, that's what's going on with them. I do want to see, I'm anxious to see how they finish the season. They cannot continue to play this way all the way up to the playoffs. No way. Because then I would be concerned. Because you don't just throw the switch. It takes some time to find it and flip it. And so I'd like to see them take it more seriously and get back to the winning ways so they go into the playoffs on a nice little stretch. 4 or 5 game winning streak or 6 out of 8, whatever, where the 2 losses were because they rested people and whatever. I think now you do wave the white flag on getting overall home court. I don't think that's going to happen. It's funny how in the span of 5 days they went from in the driver's seat to, it's the long shot.
Who knows, though? Oklahoma City could go through a bad stretch, same as the Cavs did down the stretch.
Nope, that's very true. They could. And I think, Jason, you said this last week. We're assuming Oklahoma City's going to win the West.
Yeah, that's
right.
Good luck with that.
That's a really big assumption.
I mean, Golden State is playing ball. When LeBron comes back, the Lakers are going to be a tough. There's 6 teams in the
Denver.
West. that I think could win the West. I think there's 3 in the East. More like 2.
There's 2 in the East.
I don't think the Knicks are going to do it. So I think it's either the Cavs or the Celtics in the East, and I think there's 5 or 6 in the West that would scare me. So, just get back on track. Hope someone knocks off Oklahoma City and you get home court throughout.
There was a couple of people, I think, tagged both you and me, Mike, on Twitter yesterday. We're like, before the Jazz game, we're like, I told you guys Donovan's not it. And I'm like, what?
Oh my God.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. We got a ton of those.
It doesn't take much.
Twitter is not the resting place for the well-thought-out sports take.
This is some crazy stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's stunning how you can completely disregard a 60-game or a 55-game body of work and focus on a 5 or a 10-game body of work.
I saw a crazy stat. So March is a weird month in the NBA for everybody. It happens every year. It's weird. It comes from the All-Star break. It's the dog days of the season. I know it's not dog. I always say dog days of summer, but it's not the summer.
Yeah.
I saw a stat the other day.
Barely spring.
Now, this has not been updated since the game on Friday, so this may have changed slightly. The Cavs had the number 1 offensive rating in the NBA for the season. Mm-hmm. They were number 12 in the month of March.
Oh, wow.
The Thunder had the number 1 defense in the NBA this season. They're currently, or as of Friday, were 12th in the month of March.
Interesting.
The San Antonio Spurs, who suck, don't have Wemby. They just shut down De'Aaron Fox. Had the number 1 offensive rating in the NBA in the month of March.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
The New Orleans Pelicans, also who suck, who are playing better lately to their credit, had the number 2 defense in the NBA in the month of March. Weird stuff happens in March. You have to take it all with context. Now, when you look at the big picture for the Cavs, yesterday was a good win. They had lost 4 in a row. In the month of March, they have not been playing their best basketball. They beat Portland, but were down 18 in that game. They were tied with Chicago late. They overcame a double-digit deficit in the fourth quarter against Miami. Same with Brooklyn. So they had not been playing their best basketball.
Right.
But it's hard to just look at this little stretch out of context when it seems like year after year, not just in Cleveland, but all these different teams across the NBA, it's hard to keep that hunger and that intensity to play as hard as you can for 82 games. And the defensive numbers with OKC, because part of the reason it's so good defensively is the numbers they can throw at you, the depth. They have 10, 11 guys.
Right.
Well, if they've taken a step back defensively, it's natural that you're not going to play as hard when you have a lead in the conference like Cleveland does and like OKC does. And Cleveland has a 5-game lead over Boston in the East. Do you know what the lead that OKC has over Houston in the West for the 1 seed?
Like 10, right?
Not enough. It's 13.5.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
13.5 game lead over the Houston Rockets for the 2 seed. They're also not playing, so you're just going to see a natural drop-off. So
12 games left, right, Mike?
Jeez.
For Cleveland, it's 11 now.
Oh,
11 games left for
Please
Cleveland.
get through it.
So OKC has already wrapped up home court through the West Finals.
Yes.
Oh, they have the 1 seed locked, yes.
That's insane.
Yes, they have the 1 seed locked. The Cavs have essentially, according to ESPN, right now they have a 99.8% chance of having the 1 seed locked. So, but the Thunder do officially have it locked.
Yeah.
And with that, any final thoughts
No.
on the Cavs before we move on to the
No,
Browns?
my concern level is immeasurable, but there are things that I would like to see change soon. But
All right, we're going to talk about the Browns. Quick reminder, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Costs you $0, 0 cents. Helps us out a lot, so we appreciate your guys' continued support. Guys, the quarterback carousel in the NFL continues to spin. Jameis Winston signed with the Giants this weekend. Aaron Rodgers met with the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was no deal agreed upon. Rookie quarterbacks, take him out of the equation for this specific question, but as the quarterback carousel continues to spin, Bull, what do you feel like is going to be the most likely outcome here for the Browns when it comes to which veteran quarterback they'll land on? And I know you say it doesn't matter in the big picture. I'm just asking you for your prediction. Who do you think it will be?
I mean, I think Russell, assuming Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers, which seems to be what people think is going to happen, I think Russell Wilson's going to be in a spot where what choice does he have? The Browns would be the only place he could possibly start. I guess he could go to the Giants too. I mean, would the Giants sign Russell Wilson and Jameis? I guess they could.
If he wants to start, Bull, you're right.
I mean, there's not many options, and the Browns are not going to pay him a lot of money, nor should they.
Well, what's the rumor? He wants $20 million?
Tony Grossi.
Like what
Yeah.
under what rock is that possible?
Nobody's paying him $20 million. Who's paying him $20 million?
I wouldn't think so.
What other team needs a starter?
Well, you know what he could do too? He could just sit on the sidelines and wait for the injury.
I mean, it might make sense for him to do that.
Yeah, I mean that's what I would do. If you want $20 million, you're not getting it now.
No.
Or if your best offer is not what you're looking for, then you have to make a choice. Do you want to play or do you want to be a backup and try and win a championship?
Right.
Then you could go to another team
Do you
with a better chance.
do you think that Russ is in that space yet? Because I don't think in his mind.
I don't think in his mind he is.
And I'm not
either.
sure I'd want him on my roster as a backup.
As a
quarterback.
backup?
I think he could be problematic.
It would depend on the situation. I think it would have to be the right fit.
He's always
for
been
sure.
the diva in the locker room.
Yeah.
Like, how does the second string quarterback
Yeah.
play the role of a diva?
Adam might be right. If
Yeah.
the money isn't what he wants, then just sit and wait. But again, like we were talking about it earlier with Bibee and Bieber, and it's a very similar situation. And one chooses one, and one chooses the other.
Yeah.
You don't know, is he willing to sit? Does he want to play? If you want to play,
Yeah, I know. But the Browns, like, I don't know what the Browns are willing to pay him, but it's got to be less than $10 million.
I would think it would be considerably less.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to even pay him $10 million.
Where do they even come up with the money?
Yeah, they don't. The Browns don't have
Browns don't
the
have
money
it.
to pay it.
So it
I mean,
might just be there's a game of musical chairs going on, but the music isn't going to stop.
who else needs a veteran? I mean,
Would
maybe
Minnesota,
the Vikings.
I think Minnesota was another potential.
But they're not going to pay a lot of money either
No.
because they want McCarthy to be their quarterback.
Yes.
So I'm
But
sure they'd like to have a
here's the
veteran
thing.
backup.
Minnesota is a team that was really, really close last year,
Yeah.
but they lost the most important part. If, and this is entirely possible, there's no slam dunk that McCarthy's going to be a great NFL
No,
quarterback.
sure.
In fact, I was stunned that he came out of Michigan as highly as he did, and I'm stunned that they're banking on him as much as they are. But if you're Minnesota and he's not it, your season is circling the drain the second you find out that he's not. And you run the risk of, if Russ does decide to sit on the sidelines, what if in week 2 Philly needs a quarterback?
Yeah,
then Russ goes to Philly. Then Minnesota's stuck if McCarthy isn't it.
I just think if they didn't believe in McCarthy, they would have at least franchised Sam Darnold. They
know,
could
but
have.
isn't it odd to you that a team that was 14-3 last year is willing to roll the dice on essentially a rookie quarterback?
So they gotta be pretty confident that he's going to be their guy.
What did they see in him? Camp.
I don't know. So
that's all they saw.
Yeah, I mean, but I just can't imagine they're going to spend money on. I could see them more signing Joe Flacco.
Right, and
You know.
that's another guy that is, to me, has similar parallels to Russ in that won a Super Bowl. Joe said, okay, I think my worth is more than that. I'm going to go home and watch football on my couch, and when someone gets hurt, you can give me a call.
Right.
And the Browns came and got him. And what's interesting about that is the guy's still going.
Yeah, but Joe knows he's a backup at this point. I mean, he knows that.
I think
Yeah.
he does.
He's
but
been in that role. Russ has not.
Cleveland gave him a chance to play. Indy
Right.
gave him a chance to play.
Yeah.
Russ, I just can't see Russ.
Not for big money. Flacco never got big money.
No, he didn't. But this is a guy that made his money and wants to play football.
Yeah.
I just think Russ, maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. I just think Russ he needs to have a come to Jesus with himself on his skill set. He's not the guy that won the Super Bowl.
No.
He's the guy that lost his starting job last year.
I mean, he's just not that good. I mean, I don't think there's 32 quarterbacks better than him, but there's probably 25.
Yeah,
And
I think that's a good
He's
assessment.
the type of guy that you don't really want as your starter. If you have him, you want to get somebody better. So.
I think I've said this from the beginning, and I'm going to stay with it. I thought that the Falcons were going to release Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
They, to my bemusement, did not.
Yeah, they're not going to now.
No, but they're very likely going to trade him.
Right, but there's no rush. Like if you're
there is no rush.
If you're the Falcons, you might wait till somebody gets hurt.
Well, here's the thing for Cleveland.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But if you're Cleveland and you've been playing this calculated game all along, like we're going to get him. At some point, they might say, sweeten the pot, make the deal, so he doesn't stay in Atlanta until some other starter gets hurt. If I'm Atlanta, I'm holding the ticket.
But what are you giving up for Kirk Cousins?
Probably picks. You're giving up picks, and maybe you're going to give up. Maybe you're going to give up. I don't know exactly. I don't know Atlanta's roster well enough to sit here and say, "Oh, they need a second corner, or they need a nickel corner." I don't know. I don't know their roster well enough, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. What I would think is, at some point, there's got to be a deal that Atlanta would say, oh, wow, that's a nice package of picks and a backup corner or a depth at this position. Let's do it.
Right, I hear you, and I think you're
Cleveland
probably right.
desperately needs a quarterback.
If I'm the Browns, I'm not giving up any good draft picks to get Kirk Cousins. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
No,
I need young players, not a washed-up quarterback.
No, again, it's all relative. I'm not talking about first-round picks and starters. I'm talking about a package that Atlanta says, okay, that's the best we're going to get. We thought we could get more.
But they
Let's
also
pull
have
the
to
trigger
eat.
on it.
The Browns can't even do it unless Atlanta eats most of the money anyway.
They would have to. Well, look, apparently they're willing to do that. They kept him on their roster.
I know.
At a cost of $10 million or whatever it was.
Right, but if they're going to eat a lot of the money anyway, I just don't think they're going to be in a rush to trade for him. I don't know.
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion they trade him. Like, they've kept him this long. Why trade him?
They just paid him his roster bonus.
You're not paying your starting quarterback anything. So
No, so you can look at it. Your starters on the veteran deal and your rookie and your backups on the rookie deal.
In a league that's desperate for quality quarterback play, if you think you got a quality quarterback and you've already paid him, what's the impetus to trade him at this point?
It just depends on because it's the position you can't win without. There are teams that may be in. I'm just stunned what Minnesota's doing. I'm stunned, and I do think that Aaron Rodgers is probably going to end up in Minnesota. Just because I'm Minnesota.
I think he's going to end up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but he left there without a deal, and they still don't have a deal.
I know, but I just don't understand. Like, if you're Minnesota, you could have kept Darnold. I don't know that Rodgers is any better than Darnold at this
I don't
point.
either, but at this point, I think I'm almost convinced that their team around him, you don't go 14-3 with a mediocre quarterback and a mediocre team.
No.
Something had to be great. And Darnold's play was great until he got to the playoffs.
Yeah.
But they've got a lot of nice pieces. This is a good group. I don't know that I would, as a fan, be comfortable with them saying, yeah, we're just going to put the rookie in, and with everybody else, we should be right back to where we were last year. That's a huge leap of faith.
I hear you, but you would have said the same thing about Sam Darnold last year because he had no track record of success.
No, but he went to an organization that is functional.
Right.
From an organization that was not.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. If I'm a fan of the Vikings, I'm going to trust them that they believe in McCarthy. Yeah. All the other quarterbacks from last year panned out.
Do you guys believe in McCarthy? Maybe
I didn't coming out of college, but
I didn't either.
No,
I watched him enough in college to be. I constantly said, and I was wrong on this.
Yeah.
They're not going to win a national championship with that guy.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be a great NFL quarterback. Now, maybe he's going to prove me wrong on both counts.
Or maybe it doesn't have to be great. He might just be good, and we'll see. But
I don't know if good's going to be good enough.
I still think the Browns in the end are going to draft a quarterback either at 2 or 33, and then that guy and Kenny Pickett will compete.
Do you think there's a world where they go to camp with 2 drafted quarterbacks and where they are now?
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I think that is that world exist? I don't know if that's likely, but yeah, I think that's.
Well, I think it is a possibility, but I don't think it's the most likely possibility.
Probably.
I think they draft 2 and then go out and, to your point last week, go out and roll the dice on one of these guys that the league has given up on in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And
you bring 4 guys to camp and
see what happens.
Fight for my love.
Yeah.
And keep the 3 best.
So around the horn real quick,
Spoiler
just to wrap
alert,
up.
no one's going to win your love.
Yeah.
Jay, around the horn to wrap up. Bull gave us his pick. He thought at the end of the day, if it was one of these vets, it'd be Russ Wilson.
Yeah.
Jason, if you had to pick one of these vets, who do you think is the most likely to end up here?
Kenny Pickett. Just give me Kenny Pickett.
He's already here.
Yeah.
And Jay, you going to second that with Pickett?
No, I'm saying Kirk Cousins. I think they're going to make a trade for Kirk Cousins.
3 different answers.
I think there's more to the marriage and the relationship, both professional and personal, to Kirk Cousins than we've really talked about. I think Kevin Stefanski likes him. Yeah. I think Kevin Stefanski believes there's still something left and that he can win with them.
I'm just not giving up any significant draft picks. I wouldn't even give up a 4th-round pick for him.
No, I wouldn't give up significant picks. Absolutely not.
Here's the only thing I know about Kirk, that the offseason when they pursued Deshaun, there was a lot of people in the NFL who thought they were going to go after Cousins.
Yeah.
That was never the plan. That was never. Now, obviously,
at that point, he was out of their price range.
Well, the money is. Well, he wasn't out of their price range at the time.
Before
Deshaun, they just didn't. think
before
he was
Deshaun,
worth
yes,
the
before
they just
Deshaun,
didn't think he was worth the price tag. So
right.
That's always been stuck in the back of my head.
Stefanski was here.
Kevin was here. So that's
but that price tag is completely different now than what it would have been.
Yes,
then.
but he's still also a lot worse now.
Well,
and you want to give up the draft capital that it would take. I just don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Kirk Cousins is going to be in Cleveland.
Okay. No, I don't either. I just think it's
I would
likely
even say I would even say I don't think it's likely.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
I would just say it's more likely that he's the guy. I could be wrong too.
If I have to pick between your guys, I would probably lean with Adam and Russ. I want no part of Russell Wilson in Cleveland.
Yeah. I don't either.
I just think that's a drastic error in judgment on a lot of levels. Yep. I think you're better off rolling with Kenny Pickett.
I'd rather them go with Pickett and two rookies.
Russ Mitchell.
Honestly.
Yeah. Russell Wilson's coming to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Because that would be the wrong move, and we all agree on it.
Yeah.
In about 10 minutes, we're going to talk about why evaluating quarterback prospects is so hard. So make sure you guys stick around for that. But we got to get back to the other
not
move
according
the
to
Guardians
someone.
made. Yeah, not according to someone, but we'll figure that out in a sec. But we got to talk about the other move the Guardians made after a quick word from FanDuel. March Madness is here, guys, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can bet $200 and get $200 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. That is $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories. You can even pick who's going to cut down the nets when it's all said and done. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and get in on all the college hoops action all tournament long. We talked about the Bibee extension. We talked about the starting rotation, but the Guardians also made a trade for a potential power bat in the outfield. The Guardians sent Tyler Freeman to the Colorado Rockies in exchange for an old friend, Nolan Jones, coming back to the Cleveland Guardians. He had a great season in 23, a disappointing season in 24. Bull, how do you see Nolan Jones fitting into the Guards' plans in 25?
Guys, it's not often that the best day in an offseason for a baseball team is on March 22nd, just a few days before the start of the season. But that's exactly what it was. The entire offseason has been uninspiring from the Cleveland Guardians for the most part. But Saturday was a great day. We already talked about the Tanner Bibee contract extension. Listen, who knows how it's going to pan out? Baseball is an unpredictable sport. But I absolutely love this trade of Tyler Freeman for Nolan Jones because while Nolan Jones is a boom or bust type player, he could be nothing, but he could be great. I think the upside on Nolan Jones, in my opinion, is way higher than Tyler Freeman. I think every time you make a trade with the Rockies, you usually win. They are probably the worst organization in all of baseball. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They stink. They just sent their bet. They made this trade because I thought they were going to start Zach Veen, one of their best hitting prospects in the outfield. Instead, they're going to be starting a journeyman 32-year-old by the name of Nick Martini in the outfield, who's a complete nothing. So they don't know what they're doing. They traded for Nolan Jones 2 years ago. It was actually a good, a smart move. He had a great season in 2023. I mean, he finished 5th in the Rookie of the Year. Now, last year he was hurt for most of the season. He didn't play well when he wasn't hurt, but I think the injury factored into his entire season. But in 2023, he had 20 homers. He stole 20 bases. Look at his OPS, 931. Hit for a great average. Played a very good defense. He's got a cannon for an arm. And Nolan Jones his upside is all-star. His upside is all-star. I'm not saying he's going to get there. I'm just saying you have a team that had no legitimate right fielder, in my opinion, who has very little power on paper, and you got a guy who, I don't think it's crazy, he can even lead the team in homers. I don't think he will. I wouldn't predict that. But it's not crazy.
Who's his competition outside of Jose?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, Santana, but
nobody else is a sure thing for 20.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like, it's not that outrageous.
That's what I'm saying.
Homers.
Like, if you told me Nolan Jones hit, and by the way, Nolan Jones I'm not a huge platoon guy. However, Nolan
stealing my text over here.
yeah.
You said that, yeah. Nolan Jones and John Kenzie are a perfect combo because you might get 50 home runs between them. That's pushing it, but I don't think it's impossible that they could hit 50 home runs. Certainly 40 is very doable.
I'll give you 40.
But I'm saying things go really well.
Yeah.
You could get 50 out of that. And unlike John Kenzie, who's got massive holes in his swing, obviously he has tons of power when he makes contact. But Nolan Jones has a good eye at the plate. He strikes out, but not at a ridiculous rate.
He does strike out a lot.
No. If you look at his His strikeout numbers aren't crazy.
Okay, then I'm misremembering.
Go ahead.
When he was here, he was a.
But he barely played here in the majors.
No, I know, but I mean, even after I followed, when he moved, everybody made such a big deal, like, wow, the Guardians screwed that one up. And I watched him a few times, and I'm like, maybe it was just the times I watched him. I watched him one day. I think he was 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts.
Listen, in this modern major leagues, everybody strikes out a decent amount. But he doesn't have the swing and miss.
Bull, what's a good K? I have his K rate here on Fangraphs.
K rate. I don't know if it's
no. Well,
30% is horrendous.
30% is awful. You don't want to be at 30%.
Well, he's 33, 29.7, 30.6.
That's what I thought. He swings and misses a lot, Bull.
He has had a lot of struggles against lefties throughout his career.
Yeah,
particularly in the minors.
But wait
a minute. I don't think his splits are that awful.
They were in the minors.
No, look at them last year. Look at them last 2 years.
His splits, by the way, home road for his great season in 2023 with Colorado, his numbers were just as good, if not better, on the road.
You know how I know that? Is because I remember thinking about halfway through that season, he's stockpiling home runs at mile high, in thin air.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, geez, no, he's not. He's hitting just as many home runs on the road as he is at home, which was impressive to me.
Right.
It wasn't just the air.
He gets on base. Go ahead.
I got your splits real quick.
Yeah.
But in 23, he had 13 homers against righties, 7 against lefties.
And you'd expect there to be.
But he probably played a lot more against righties.
294 plate appearances against righties for only 130.
So it's actually
a
better rate against
per at bat. He's hitting more home runs righty.
He had a higher batting average against lefties by
his splits,
26 points.
That's not bad.
OPS was a little lower.
Coming up through the minors, and I think part of the Cleveland's concerns when they moved him was his struggles against left-handers throughout the minors. Now
he's fixed that clearly based on those numbers.
His strikeout rate is what it is, but I think he can bring it down because he has a good feel for the strike zone. He walks a lot. What was his on base percentage, Mike, in 23?
In 23, on base. In 23 was 389.
That's elite.
That's good.
389
what about
on base.
Last year, though?
Last year, now granted, he didn't play a ton last year.
No, I know.
Dropped to 321.
Okay, see, Bull, I think you're right on that.
Yeah.
You remember who was the long Bradley for the tall
Bobby Bradley.
No.
Milton.
Bradley Zimmer.
Oh, Bradley Zimmer, yeah.
A pro scout told me when I was always like Bradley Zimmer's going to be an MVP.
Yeah.
I just was intoxicated with his skill set.
Yeah.
He goes, no, he's not. He's got holes all over his swing. His arms are too long, and that kind of that came out to be true.
Yeah.
What is he? In my mind, he's like a 6'4" or 6'5" guy. He's a big guy.
Nolan?
Yeah.
I don't know he is
He's
big.
listed on Pro Baseball Reference at 6'5",
That's what I
195.
thought. So my fear is that maybe he can't lower that swing rate. He does have natural holes in his swing because of his arms. But here's the interesting thing about what you said about coming out of the minors. Think about how the Guardians have changed their view on hitting since Vogt came. Remember last year, what was the number one point of emphasis at spring training? It's okay, swing and miss.
That's right.
So I think where they were using the metric 2 years before, no, we do not like swing and miss. We don't like it. We don't like it. You got to put the ball in play. And that would be a reason to then trade Nolan Jones. And then Nolan Jones had almost a rookie of the year type season, and their philosophy has since changed. Swing for the fences, baby. If you miss, you miss. He fits in more now with this team.
I don't think that was a Vogt thing. I think it's an organizational thing.
No, I do too. Yeah. It coincided with Vogt's arrival because I do think they're setting the point on the horizon in the front office.
Bazana fits this as well as another middle infielder, but I do wonder if they're starting to move away from just stockpiling middle. It didn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't.
No.
Who has panned out? Now,
and you've got Arias and you've got Schneemann. Why would you even need Freeman?
And that's why I think I think Tyler Freeman will be an okay major league player. Yeah. He'll play every day in Colorado. He'll hit 280, 290. He's not going to hit for a lot of power.
Homers.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah.
He'll fill a need and he's fine. I agree. I think upside, Nolan is an everyday player. Worst case scenario, I think he's a huge upgrade over Will Brennan. I'm not a Will Brennan fan. I don't think Will Brennan needs to be in the lineup every day. He's a fourth outfielder. He is who he is.
Where's he go now?
I don't think they may trade him. I don't know.
And they had told him already, you're on the roster. But I don't see how you keep him now.
Maybe they do just to start the season and
but
then eventually move
There's
on.
no real role
There
for
really
him.
isn't.
Does he have an option left?
I don't know if he has an option.
I don't remember.
But I like the pairing of Nolan and Noel as a platoon. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I hate platoons. It feels like splitting quarterbacks. If you got two, you don't have one.
Yeah, but it's right field. And
if it works, like I think Noel can pound lefties, and I think Nolan can hit righties. And if Nolan proves that his rookie year wasn't a fluke and he can consistently hit lefties, if he can evolve like Josh Naylor did, you have an everyday right fielder who's actually very athletic. He came up as a third baseman, so you could probably move him around.
Sure.
First base, if you have a need there, you wouldn't think you wouldn't with Manzardo long term, but you never know. So I think you can move Nolan around a little bit. And
he's big enough to do it.
There is enough. The Guardians, I believe, regretted that trade almost instantly.
Yeah, they did.
That they made it. And I talked to people. I had a conversation with somebody at spring training last year who said, we can't miss like we've missed on Nolan. We can't have those mistakes to where he was a second-round pick. They spent 4 years or whatever the number of years was developing in their organization.
And then they kissed him off.
And then he goes off and
Well, and they never really gave him a
elsewhere.
chance.
No.
He barely played for them.
And part of that was because of, we've talked about, I mean, how many years did we spend, I don't know if it was on the show, but for years, Zach and I wrote about the 40-man roster crunch because they have all these prospects and they never made a trade. And they never unhinged the bottleneck. So they had all these guys that they had to fit or else they were going to lose them to the Rule 5 draft.
Yeah.
So they had to make decisions on guys a lot quicker than they did before. Who is the guy that, now I'm drawing a blank, they kept him way too long. The first baseman from the Rays. Got him in a trade.
Oh, Jake Bowers.
Yeah.
How long did Bowers hang around?
Yep.
And they kept trying. And
Yeah,
they kept trying. But with a guy like Nolan Jones, they had to move fast.
Yeah.
Because there's prospects coming up behind them. So
Right.
you have to make decisions on guys faster than they did previously. And they missed. And they knew they missed almost immediately. And that's why I think that they were shocked that they were able to get him back. I joke with Zach.
Love it.
Hey, can they trade Schneemann now and get Caminero back from Tampa? Like,
Undo their
can we
past
start
sins.
undoing
Maybe,
all the? They don't make many mistakes.
No, I know they
Diaz, the catcher with the Astros.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, but
Can you make a move to go
here's
get him
the thing
back?
about this. I like the move. I think it's a great move. I do think Jones is closer to the player he was in 23 than what we saw last year.
I agree.
Yeah.
And they're banking on it that he is.
Yeah.
What's fascinating to me, though, is they could possibly – there's a scenario where they miss on him twice. They gave up on him too soon, and they thought there was more left when they brought him back.
Yeah. You never know.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
I do think it's so hard for platoon guys because what do when you go to a new team? You're walking in the locker room, the first thing you want to show the clubhouse is that you belong. If you get limited at bats or you're only playing every third day or maybe, whatever it shakes out to be, it's really hard to get into that everyday rhythm. And I like Noel a lot, but only in certain situations, and I like Jones a lot. I like Jones more of the two versus lefties and righties. I think that his splits are close enough to where, like, hell, his home run per at-bat ratio was better.
I would give him a chance for sure.
Yeah.
I think throughout his career, I think he's got, I looked it up earlier, I think he's got 25 career home runs, 17 against lefties. Against righties. Yeah, against righties.
Yeah, but he's got half the at-bats against.
He's young enough, and there's enough there. I would like to see him play against lefties.
He's only 26.
And have the opportunity to establish himself as an everyday player. And then if it doesn't work, then you can platoon him. But I think the upside on Nolan Jones is way higher than it is.
But see, the only bad thing about the everyday thing is, too, then you got Noel sitting there.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a chance Carlos Santana goes off the cliff.
Yes,
absolutely.
And Noel becomes
then Manzardo's playing first base, Noel's DHing.
Right.
And Nolan Jones is playing right field every day.
I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good lineup,
That's
provided
possible.
that Noel can be effective against pitchers, lefty and righty. One thing, before we go, I know we want to move off this in 20, and I think we've probably talked the topic out. We all like the move.
Yeah.
I read this yesterday, and I wanted to throw this out to you guys because I was fascinated by it. Major League Baseball has been around 150 years, a little more.
Yeah.
How many Major League stadiums do you think you could fill with every single player that's ever played professional Major League Baseball?
Oh, gosh.
Just take a guess.
Remember.
How many stadiums do you think you'd fill?
With every player.
Yeah, now it's 150 years.
Right. I think I knew the number, and now I can't remember.
I'm trying to do quick math.
Yeah.
I'm going to say
in the average stadium and say it's 40,000.
40,000.
Yeah, so
I'm going to
average
say 22 stadiums.
22 stadiums?
Yeah.
What do you think, without doing any real digging? He's got his calculator out.
Yeah, but I hate making these guesses because it's so wildly
way off.
wrong.
Yeah,
But that's the fun of it.
Go ahead.
Bull just threw a number out.
I said 22.
22 Major
said
League
20.
stadiums.
I'll say 25.
Okay, I would have said 10. Cleveland's Progressive Field is the smallest capacity in all of the big leagues. It's hold 37,000.
Yeah.
It would only be 61% full if you put every single player that's played a major league game, even if it was only one game.
There's only 20,000 players?
22,000 men can say,
that's insane.
I was a professional Major League Baseball player.
That
was my reaction. My reaction is, that
crazy
is astonishing to me. What? And here's why I bring that up. I've always hated, look, if you want to boo,
confirmed.
Boo.
Jay is right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nuts. I've always been a fan of, fans have the right. Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
You want to boo, that's fine. However, there are levels to it. What drives me more crazy than I think maybe anything in all of sports is when I go to a game and I'm sitting next to a guy that probably played Little League Baseball, and that's as far as he went.
Yeah.
And he's yelling at either one of his team's players or the opposing team's player, "You're a bum! You suck!"
Boy, you've never done that. You've never gone to a game and yelled,
Never.
That guy's a bum.
I say it in my living room a lot.
I was harassing Tom Brunansky once at Fenway Park.
I love Tom Brunansky.
By the way, last thing.
22,000 Major League Baseball
nuts.
players in the history of 150 years of the game.
30 seconds here, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Can you imagine, again, we talked about the upside of what the pitching staff could look like in September. Let me take you to the summer of 2026. It's a long way ahead, and there's a whole lot of ifs here. But you could potentially be looking at this. This could be exciting, right?
Yeah.
Kyle Manzardo at first, Brian Rocchio coming around at short, Bo Naylor developing a catcher. Not sure.
Bazzana
at second, Jose at third, Quan in left, Nolan Jones in right, and what's his name? DeLauder's not really a center fielder, but I'm going to throw him in center field.
You got to put him somewhere.
Quan can play center.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put Quan at center and DeLauder in left. There's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of potential. That's a lot of ifs, but
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right, Mike.
All right, moving on here, guys. First, a word from Living for We, our new sponsor of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. What happens when a regular day at school turns into the worst day of your life? Unfortunately, that's a reality that's happening way too frequently in today's world. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for younger people in America, and in communities of color, the impact is even greater. Every bullet fired creates two victims, the person in front of the gun and the one pulling the trigger. Living for We, Keep Your Head Up is an award-winning podcast that focuses on real stories, real struggles, and real solutions in Northeast Ohio. New episodes drop every other Tuesday, including tomorrow, where you'll hear from host Marlene Harris-Taylor and her new co-host Maisha Watkins, the executive director of the Cleveland Peacemakers. No one does a better job of bringing you the stories from the front lines, victims, survivors, and those fighting for change. Each episode, they sit down with a different organization that's working to end gun violence and provide resources for those affected by gun violence. Whatever kind of help you need, there's a person for you to contact. Listen to Living for We wherever you get your podcasts or watch the video version on IdeaStream's YouTube channel. You can learn more at ideastream.com/podcasting/livingforwe. Subscribe today to Living for We on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, guys, Mary Kay in her mailbag column this week touched on a number of different topics, but one statement, and it was a throwaway statement in one of her answers, caught my eye, and I figured it'd be a great discussion for us to have today. While answering a question about how the Browns have found themselves in this quarterback situation, Mary Kay wrote, and I quote, "It's easier to project quarterbacks into the NFL now than it was 10 years ago because the college concepts have trickled up," end quote. That was the end of her answer to the question. When you look at the numbers of quarterbacks drafted in the first round and their retention rate by the same team that drafted them getting a second contract, over the last 10 drafts, it's under 50%. Jason,
what was it before that, though, Mike? Do you know what it was the 10 years before that?
I don't, but I'll look it up while you guys are answering.
Yeah, because we'd have to have that information to establish it.
Because that may sound low, but maybe it was 30% before
right.
that.
Less than 50%.
Her
is still
premise,
terrible.
and it's not
it
hers.
Is still bad,
I've heard this I've heard this same premise being repeated across the league for the last 3 years. So her premise is actually on point.
So let me just ask the question, then I'll look that up.
Yeah.
Do you guys believe and agree with Mary Kay that it's easier to evaluate quarterbacks now than it was, we'll use a decade as a reference point?
I'll just be 10 seconds. She's right. It's easier. However, the sub-headline should have read, it's still by far the most difficult position in all of sports to project. I still think that. But it is easier.
It may be easier. I don't know that I buy that it's significantly easier, but yes.
The concepts trickling up is absolutely true.
But here's what's different in the other way.
Okay.
Is that there's more pressure on teams to draft a quarterback. So even if a team is like, I don't know about this guy, there's pressure on them to draft him, especially because it's not as punitive if you do, because you're not paying them what they used to. So if you screw up, you can go draft a quarterback again next year if it's that bad. So while maybe
you think it's still, to me, the hardest position to project. There are more variables to success at quarterback than anyone else.
And some of the most important things I think get overlooked, like how smart a guy is, how his ability to read. Yeah, like what's in his heart.
Yeah.
Is he live, eat, breathe, sleep football? Yeah. Or is this just a job for him? These things all matter.
And it's so hard to get that answer in the limited amount of time that these guys get to spend. And I'll go back to when I wrote the book after the Cavs championship. I know it's a different sport, but stick with me for 10 seconds. I was talking to David Griffin, and he was blunt in his assessment of Anthony Bennett. And he said as soon as it was hard, he was out. And I was the one on campus at UNLV, and I didn't, we didn't know. We didn't know that until we had him here. And I wonder if 10 years from now, because of NIL, we'll have a better idea of how to evaluate. Because how does a guy react when you give him the money?
Yeah. Well, now we know that.
And you'll have a better feel. I don't know if NIL's been around long enough, and who knows what NIL will look like 10 years from now. But you don't know how these guys are going to react. If at 22 years old, I give each of you $5 million. Which one of you is going to buy one house, one car, find a financial advisor you can trust and invest it, and which one of you is going to go out and buy hookers and blow? And how do you know that? How do you know?
You don't know.
You don't know. Like I was thinking about this driving in of whether or not I should mention this name with you two savages sitting on either side of me, but I'm just going to throw the raw meat on the table and let you chew. I saw clips all weekend of Baker Mayfield on social media talking about like hitting rock bottom, talking about his faith. Guys, that is not the quarterback the Browns drafted. He has changed so much, and you don't know who the guy is you're bringing in, and you don't know who he's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now.
That's the bigger part of it. Who at 22 is who they were or who at 25 is who they were at 22.
And that's why, and you're talking about the most important position in sports, and you're talking about all the responsibilities that these guys have. Who is going to be willing to put in the work?
Yep.
Who is willing, because it's funny, like, who has the drive to be Tom Brady? And how do you know that in 45 minutes?
Right.
Yeah.
You don't. And that's why, so I agree with part of what she's saying, but the other part, it's impossible to drill down on these guys and get all the information that you need until you get them into your building, and then it's too late. Because when the Browns got Johnny Manziel in and realized he didn't open the playbook ever,
now the problem with Johnny Manziel is he's the outlier. There were too many red flags for them to have missed.
Yeah.
You didn't need 45 minutes with him.
Right.
All you had to do is pay attention to the media.
But the point is, you don't know until you get them in the building who they really are, and then it's too late.
Yeah, but in most cases. Manziel, they knew.
What I would say on Manziel, though, is indicative of another problem in the process. I bet the Browns' talent evaluators, their scouts, probably on some level knew they should not draft him.
Yeah.
But if the owner says, I want Johnny Football,
right,
what are you going to do? I wonder, I don't know if we'd ever be able to find this out, but we won't be able to. Maybe somebody will write a book someday. I wonder what percentage of the quarterbacks that flop as first-round picks was there a group within the organization, maybe even the majority of the scouts that were like, don't take him, don't take him, don't take him. Yeah. But either the GM, who's not doing the daily scouting, or the owner overruled them on the decision.
Yeah, it's tough because there's...
How would you know that?
How would you get that data?
Yeah.
And there's, I think, in most organizations, there's always dissent.
Sure.
I mean, rarely is it a slam dunk where the entire organization is on the same page.
Right.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I think in the case of Johnny Manziel, Jimmy said, "This is my team." And a homeless guy told me to take him.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take him.
Yeah. I know with 100% certainty that was the Ray Farmer draft. He wanted Zach Martin.
Right. He didn't want Johnny Manziel. Right.
They wanted no part of it. Was the Manziel Gilbert draft.
Right.
And they wanted.
They didn't want either of those guys, right?
No.
Yeah.
I have in my notes who
and,
it was. It was Zach Martin and somebody else.
Right.
And Ray wanted to build the lines. And he wanted to build inside out.
Right.
And Zach Martin, it was a receiver. It was a receiver who had a decent career. I could find it. Who it was, who the
you
front
want
office.
The 2014 draft? Was it Brandon Cooks?
It might have been. Yeah, I think that might have been it. It might have been.
You told me that Zach Martin and Cooks were the two guys.
Okay, then that's who it was.
Yeah. It's the hardest position in sports to project, and for the things that you talked about, I had a sports psychologist tell me the craziest thing about the draft is the male mind isn't fully developed until you're 25 years old.
And I would argue it's not at 25.
Mine took to 45.
I'll tell you, let you know when I get there. I'm 48.
I mean, and so here's the part that they say is developing when you're, before you're 25. Decision making and punitive action. So a lot of men, young men, before they hit 25, are making decisions without calculating in the ramifications. Hell, I'm going to do it. They don't even think about, well, what if I get caught? Or what if I get hurt? Or none of that. That's why the number one age group for injuries are, and I don't mean in sports, I mean in life, is young men. Because we jump off two-story RVs onto tables filled with beer to impress our friends.
I jumped out of a plane at 22.
Well, I've done that too. Yeah. I mean, not rational thought, but I did it when I was much older. I was like 45 when I did it. But the thing of it is, the sports psychologists will tell you, it's almost like trying to recruit a player physically before they've matured.
Yeah.
How the hell do I know what he's going to look like when his shoulders broaden and he becomes a man? Same thing. How do I know what he's going to think like when he's 25?
Well, maybe the answer is you got to draft Tyler. What do we decide?
Draft the guys. Draft the guys that are fully mature.
But he didn't dominate. He's a grown man.
26. He's
a grown man playing with kids, and he couldn't dominate.
Yeah, that's a red flag.
Well,
so
he didn't have great talent
I think that
around
both
him.
things can be true. Yes, it's easier to because the game that they're playing. I mean, imagine this: they used to recruit guys from triple option offenses and try to make them professional quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Like you talk about round peg square hole. At least now they're playing pro style offenses more in college, so a scout can look at it and say, "Well, that's our system," and he runs it really well, and the skill set is transferable.
Right.
So it is easier in that vein, but there's still so many unknown variables.
Can I ask a
I think
question?
it's impossible.
Hang on,
to
real quick
project.
for you. I want to put a bow on something you were talking about, like not everybody agrees. Like you got all these voices in the room, and how do you come to a consensus? I'll go back to the Bennett draft with the Cavs. I think I mentioned this on the show. The vote to take Anthony Bennett was 9-1. I think it was 9-1 within the Cavs, and the one dissenting vote was Chris Grant. He didn't want him, and he got fired for taking Anthony Bennett, and it's known as the worst number one pick in the history of the NBA draft.
And he was the only dissenting voice.
And he didn't want him. He's the one guy that didn't want him, and he got fired for it.
Well, who did he want?
I mean, it wasn't any better.
Yeah.
It was a terrible draft.
Later in the draft, weren't there some good players?
Giannis.
Yeah, right.
But he wanted, I think it was Ben McLemore. So it wasn't. He was better than Bennett, but not by much. But the point is, you just don't know behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And all that's in the book. Like I had all that in the book that I wrote. But you don't know behind closed doors. I mean, the guy who's out there, that's like what I was saying about Barry saying we're not trading Miles. That's because that's what Jimmy's telling him to say. The guy, a lot of times the GM is the press secretary for what the owner is saying, or it's just the consensus.
And he's so convincing that he believes he makes everybody believe.
Maybe he does. Yeah. Maybe he does. But I'm just saying, a lot of times they're putting up a united front, but it's not always that way behind closed doors.
Well, I can say this with certainty, and I haven't talked to anybody inside the building. There is absolutely a 0% chance they come up with total uniformity this year. Impossible. There's no way with all the people they have in their organization.
Unlikely,
Because you know what I've learned from that? I've sat on this panel with 5 different people over the last month, and there's 5 different people that we should take number 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you think that everybody within the Browns organization is going to say,
and by the
here
way,
he is.
By the way, that's healthy.
It is healthy.
When you get into trouble is when you get the group think and you are in an echo chamber
100%.
and everybody's saying the same thing.
Yes.
You want guys arguing, going back and forth. That's how you come, usually, that's how you come to the best healthy decision.
Right.
Mike,
Let me
what's your
ask you guys
question?
this.
I agree with that.
With all the new information we have, we know more about these guys, or at least we think we know more about these guys than ever before. Every pass is charted, and we have access to stuff that we did not have access to before. Does that extra information, in theory, is a good thing? You think more information better. But is there sometimes an overkill of information that you think sometimes the access to all this extra knowledge, the statistics, the analytics, can actually making the decision more clouded than it was before?
Probably.
I think absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the extra access that fans and media have creates more pressure too.
Yeah, because there's an argument to taking everybody then.
Yeah.
And there's an argument against taking everybody.
Right.
Because there's so much info. It's up to the organization to place priorities on information. For instance, some organizations say, my guy, absolutely, this is a non-starter. He has to be above everything else accurate. And then there might be another organization that says, I don't care about accuracy. I need decision-making under pressure.
Yeah.
That is the most important. So if I'm prioritizing the skill sets, what makes a great NFL quarterback? Every team has to do this. What's number one? Well, one team, it might be decision-making. Another team might be size. Another team might be mobility. Another team might be accuracy. And because of that, all of this information makes it very difficult.
A tangible example to what you just said, 2 different levels. Jim Tressel in college, do not screw up my 3. He told Krenzel that in a game against NC State off a turnover, don't screw up our 3, playing for field goals. Like, don't turn the ball over.
Yes.
Whatever you do, be cautious, be safe.
So Jameis Winston wouldn't have been a good quarterback.
Jameis would have put Jim in the ground. But and I know I've mentioned this a couple times, but I'm just fascinated by it. Then the conversation with Mike Martz about, hey, give me the guy who can throw it through the keyhole because I can rein him in and pull that back. But if you give me somebody who's afraid to make a turnover or afraid to make a bad throw, I can't do anything with that.
Yeah, it's all personal preference.
It is. And it doesn't make one right and one wrong. It just, this is the way we're wired and this is what I want.
But I do think it's very important, and I think this is what the Steelers have. I think that before you can have success, you have to have a blueprint. You don't just willy-nilly build a house and see how it turns out. You have plans, a blueprint. Every inch of that plan is already mapped out. It's easy to build a good house when you have a blueprint. Now just take a pile of lumber, nails, roofing material, and everything, and just put it on a site and say, okay, now build something. Just go haphazardly. That's what the Browns do. The Browns try to invent it as they go along. As an organization, the Steelers are about great defense and running the football. Why? Because of where they're located and the division in which they play. They're playing games that are cold weather and defense travels, and the run game is more reliable than the passing game in all weather elements. So it makes sense if you play football in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to have that blueprint. What the hell are the Browns about? Like they've
now,
got
Steeler fans would argue the blueprint's been a failure.
They haven't won anything without
Listen,
since their lead quarterback retired.
If that is the bar for failure, then yes, they have been.
Yeah.
My bar for success is meaningful football in December.
Right.
When was the last time Pittsburgh played a game in which a playoff spot wasn't up for grabs? I can tell you this, it never happened in Ben Roethlisberger's career.
Yeah.
Every time he stepped foot on the field, even his last games of the season, in the years in which he didn't make it, there was a path to go there. How many football games have the Browns played since Ben came into the league to now? Have their playoff hopes been alive in the month of December?
Right, but that's it. I mean, the team.
No, I get that.
Yeah, but the teams that have the quarterbacks always have a chance.
Correct.
Yeah.
However, what I'm saying by this is they've got a plan. There's been a point on their horizon, and it hasn't changed since the 70s. If you start plotting the Browns' points on the horizon, the reason they've never gone anywhere is because they don't know where they're going. They're going in a million different directions. Let's find an owner who hires and empowers a general manager to, what's our blueprint? What are the Cleveland Browns going to be about? And then you hire all of your scouts, all of your coaches, and draft all of your players that have the skill set that can take you to where you want to go. Don't buy a Maserati if you're going across the country. But if you need to go someplace fast, buy a Maserati. But what are we about? And that's
they have a system that works for them.
Yes.
The Browns don't have a system. Now, it's a chicken and the egg. Do they have a system because they've had success, or do they have success because of the system?
I can answer that for you.
Yeah.
It is the chicken is the owner. The egg is everything else.
Well, yeah.
The egg came from the owner.
Right.
And in this case, the Browns, they're very top of the food chain, the tip of the pyramid, is willy-nilly. What's he about? Look at the players he's drafted and the variety of skill sets that they've had. Well, when you look at the Steelers, they build a great defense. They always have a great defense. They're always strong on the defensive line. They always have a good offensive line, and they can always run the ball. Okay, that's translated from the 70s, 50 years later. The Browns, just like if you try to describe what kind of team they build, you're going to come up with everything under the sun, and none of it's worked because they keep changing their point on the horizon.
Right. But now, when they've actually been consistent with coaching and GM, a lot of people have complained about it.
They have been consistent.
Yeah.
However, have their decisions been consistent, or are they still doing what the owner ultimately wants them to do?
Well,
and for that,
that's
I'll just
always
give
a
you
factor.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I just think that I don't care. I've been told that I'm wrong. I'm going to die thinking this. Deshaun Watson was in Cleveland because that's who Jimmy Haslam wanted. It doesn't happen if he didn't want it.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that he's the one that wanted it, and you get what you get. Now you're paying the man.
Well, they were going to have to move on from Baker anyway.
Okay, let's not relitigate that. But what I would say to that is there are other it's not like he was the only girl at the dance.
At the time, to me, it seemed like a no-brainer, and I think most people felt that way. It turned out not to be.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to that's actually another great example of a rookie class and where are these guys mentally. There was no way for the Browns to know what kind of mental, emotional damage was done to Deshaun based on those X number of year and a half. Whatever.
I'll give them a pass for that. You're right. You can't measure that.
And I, when I was at the owners' meetings right after they got him, we did one show shortly after I got back, and it was a flippant comment. I remember you were hosting, and I flippantly said, there was talking to people at the owners' meetings that wonder, like, what kind of lasting impact will this have on him? And we both sort of dismissed it, like, nah. But it's very real. But it's impossible.
When the final book is written, by the way, I'm still hopeful that there's a chapter out there unwritten. I'm told he's working his ass off.
He posted a workout video, comeback video.
And I'm not even talking about the video, because you can make a video in 40 minutes that makes it look like you're working 8 hours a day. I've heard he's putting in the work. And so maybe this isn't the last chapter. Maybe, because if the skill set is there, but it was always this, these can be rehabilitated. There's a history and a past of guys fixing this muscle.
First of all, the shoulder never looked right to me last year.
No, I know. That's an issue, too.
And that was a rare injury that there's not a lot of history of quarterbacks coming back from that. And now you add 2 Achilles tears on top of it.
I know.
I have firmly in the camp he's played his last snap for the Browns.
I think he's played his last snap in the NFL.
Probably.
That is overwhelmingly the thought.
Yeah.
But you
never know.
Is there a chance? I saw Michael Vick come back from prison and play at an incredible level.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm by no means am I predicting it, but I'm also not writing off the possibility that he comes back for somebody and plays a serviceable quarterback position. But I don't think he'll ever be the player that he once was.
No chance.
All right, we got one more topic to get to today, guys. If you want to sign up for the UCSS newsletter, you can text the number at the bottom of your screen, 216-435-1590. That gets you signed up for our weekly newsletter. It gives you some insights into who's coming on the show that week, anything you may have missed. And Steve has now added a On This Day in Cleveland History to the newsletter. So if you want those kind of things, text the number on the bottom of your screen. Make sure you sign up. We appreciate the support.
What is on this day? Do we have one for today?
We do. On this day, Muhammad Ali defeated Chuck Wepner by TKO in the 15th round at the Richfield Coliseum.
Yeah, how about that?
Chuck Wepner, isn't Rocky loosely based on Chuck Wepner?
I believe you're right. Now, a lot of people don't know this. He went on to, no, this would be a bad joke because no one in our audience will get it. He went on to start the People's Court. Wasn't that Judge Wepner?
Wapner.
I told you it would be a bad joke.
Yeah,
that belongs on the
And
dad
nobody in
jokes.
our audience has ever heard of Judge Wapner.
He's long dead, isn't he?
That was bad.
Chuck Wapner sucked, by the way. He was a tomato can.
The Tom Hanks movie with Dustin Hoffman. No
Yeah.
one's seen that? Are we really that old?
Yeah.
I forget when he's autistic.
Yeah, I know what the movie. It's
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Rain Man.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Dustin Hoffman plays Rain Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought he
Cruise
said
is his
Tom
brother.
Hanks
No.
instead of
Oh,
Tom
you
Cruise.
did say
He
Tom
did say
Hanks.
Hanks.
Yeah, no, Tom
He said
Cruise.
Hanks.
did I say Hanks?
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
said I don't ever remember them playing in a movie
no.
together.
3
Yeah,
o'clock.
Tom Cruise
Time
and
to watch
Dustin
Wapner.
Hoffman. Yeah,
He kept his
he had to
Wapner-
watch. He had to watch
10
People
minutes
Scored
long.
every day at 4:30.
He kept his notebook.
People
We've
Scored.
officially lost 3/4 of the audience
There you
now
go.
in the last 3 minutes.
And
We'll
no, because
bring
it's a
him back
great
with
movie
this.
and it translates.
It's a
Watch
great movie.
Rain Man, people.
Great
It's great.
Great movie.
My favorite scene is when he spills the box of toothpicks, and he's able to tell you how many
Exactly
how
how
many
many.
there were there.
I wonder if there's people out there that can actually do that.
I don't know.
Maybe.
It probably is.
Go ahead, Mike.
We'll bring the guys back with this. During the Cavs' 4-game skid before they won yesterday, the betting odds for the DPOY award changed quite a bit. Evan Mobley, before the 4-game skid, was the prohibited favorite, up to minus 250 in certain sports books. Now, Draymond Green has surpassed Evan Mobley as the betting favorite. He is minus 105 on FanDuel. Mobley's down to 115.
Is that
is
really
what it is.
breaking news?
That is what it's still going to be breaking news. But on the
know.
Hoop Collective podcast,
Odds
which
have
is Brian Windhorst, Tim Bontemps, and a couple others, Windy made some interesting comments on Mobley and his defensive presence over the last couple of games. They're both short, so we're going to play them both real quick. This is the first from Brian Windhorst on the Hoop Collective podcast.
Evan Mobley's status for Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion, has taken some hits this week, including in the game you were at, where Ivica Zubac had 20 rebounds by himself, and the Cavs had 29 as a team.
So that was the first part. A little later in the conversation between Windy and Bontemps, Brian Windhorst had this to say in terms of teams, quote-unquote, chasing Mobley in switches. Steve, let's play the next clip.
And Udonis Haslem is out here doing TV, and Haslem was making great points about, like, teams will try to hunt Mobley on switches, making him switch on to star
Well,
guards.
it happened last night.
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan, again, Evan Mobley had a 31-point game on Wednesday night. The Sacramento Kings ran plays to get Evan Mobley onto DeMar DeRozan down the stretch, and DeRozan was scoring.
Here's the stupid part of this, Mike. You can't lose it based on 5 games. So he should have. If it's that big of an issue, then he should have never been in the conversation to begin with. That's stupid. What? All of a sudden, 5 games he can't play defense?
Well, let me. I on the surface, you're right. It's stupid. But Mike, let me ask you something. Sometimes teams expose a weakness that becomes a blueprint for how you beat that team. Is this, because I have not been paying close enough attention, and I probably wouldn't even noticed it if I had been looking for it. I don't watch basketball the same way you guys do. Is it possible that in the last month, teams have gone to this as a strategy, and now it's on tape a lot more, and people are saying, oh my God, we can get Mobley on a favorable matchup for us and smoke him. And now teams are doing it because they've seen others have success.
I think a lot of things can be true at the same time.
Okay.
First and foremost, before Wemby got hurt, Wemby was running away with this award. Mobley was in second place.
Yeah.
When Wemby got hurt, it was Jaren Jackson and Evan Mobley neck and neck for the award. Jaren Jackson got hurt. Mobley became the prohibitive favorite.
Right.
I think it is absurd, to Bull's point, that Draymond Green has now surpassed him in a 5-game stretch.
Isn't
when you look
it
at their
infinitesimal?
overall,
What are the odds? They're very close.
they're very close,
anyhow.
but Draymond has come out of nowhere, was not even in the conversation
Right.
2 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
it's
It is
so
now
dumb.
the betting favorite. When you look at their individual defensive stats, Mobley is the higher defensive rating.
Right.
He has more blocks. Draymond is they're right in the same category for steals, but that shouldn't be a conversation. In terms of the chasing switches, Jason and I have actually talked about this. We talked about it on the Cavs show once, and I think we did it even more last year. I think Evan Mobley is at his best defensively as essentially the free safety of the defense, where you have Allen at the rim, and when a guy gets into the paint, not only is he trying to get past his own defender, but now he has to deal with Mobley from the help side coming over, swatting shots. He's 6'11", he's rangy, he can jump, he gets his hands in the right positions all the time. Do you know how you take Mobley out of that help side position? You chase the switch.
And that's
you
what they're
try to
doing.
attack him one-to-one. It is not necessarily an indictment on Evan Mobley that teams are trying to isolate those switches. By the way, the two guys that they were referencing in those clips, James Harden and DeMar DeRozan, feel like they can get past any defender in the league, whether they're 6'2
Bingo.
or
Yep.
6'11.
They're very good.
I think those are isolated situations. I think
Okay.
Evan Mobley is maybe not the best in the league in terms of bigs on switches, but he's in that top tier category. He's also elite when it comes to rim protection from the help side.
That's why I still like him.
If you have to pick and choose your battle, if you're attacking Cleveland, and you're asking me, what do I think you have a better chance of having success at? Isolating Mobley and having a good scorer go against Mobley, or try to beat a Dean Wade or DeAndre Hunter off the dribble, get to the paint, and then deal with them on top of Evan Mobley coming over for help. Yeah, I think the better defensive strategy is to, quote-unquote, chase that switch.
So, Mike, you're saying that Tim Bontemps and known Cavs hater Brian Windhorst are
Stop it.
lost in the soup on this,
Stop
right?
it.
No, I think, well, the Defensive Player of the Year odd stuff, yes. In terms of, do I think teams may be chasing Mobley switches? Yes, and I think it's more of a compliment to Evan than it is an indictment on what he can do.
Sure.
So all
and
this changing
I
in the
agree with
voting
that.
is ludicrous.
But no, there's a larger conversation to
Yeah.
the larger conversation to the larger conversation.
Go ahead. What is it?
Nobody knows how to grade Defensive Player of the Year. There's no metric
That's
out
true.
there. There's no like.
Well, there are, but
you can look at
you
MVP.
can look at blocks.
You can look at MVP and you can say, okay, well, this is their VORP, this is their PER, this is their points, rebounds. Like this is who, with Defensive Player of the Year. Chris Paul won it because he led the league in steals. Yet you talk to players in the league who say Chris Paul's a terrible defender. He puts his teams in awful positions because he's constantly chasing steals.
So again, it's which stat do you prioritize?
So then blocks, and okay, Rudy Gobert wins. Talk to guys in the league. Rudy Gobert sucks. He should never win Defensive Player of the Year. So there is no great way to measure this, which is why you wind up in situations like this, where over a 5-game stretch, Draymond Green, who, by the way, promoted himself for Defensive Player of the Year on his podcast.
And through
ridiculous.
groupthink, here we are.
And talks more than anybody in the league. And what does Evan Mobley do less than anybody in the league? Talk. So it's all of this stuff put into the pot that I think is how you wind up
And the other thing is, don't tell me that the voters aren't looking at the odds and see who the favorite is.
And the whole thing
that
is
impacts
ridiculous.
how they
So
vote.
when I voted on this stuff for 10 years. And this was the hardest one for me to get right.
Yeah, I can see how it would be.
And I always went to the players, not just Cavs. I covered the Cavs, but I had relationships with other teams, and I'd go to their PR people and say, hey, like, set me up here so I can talk to some of these guys. I'm not going to burn them. I just want to know, like, I got to fill in this vote. I need to know.
You know how you decide that award? And this might be controversial. Let the players pick that one.
But then the
'Cause
players.
I do agree with you. I know it becomes a popularity contest, but I always trust the players on certain things like that. And because there's so many metrics, and you're right, it is. I've always said I use my eye test. But you'd have to watch every single play of every single team of every single game.
For that award, and I always gauge the player's temperature on all of the awards.
Yeah.
But that one in particular, I basically, and listen, I'm not talking to every player in the league, but I would probably talk to all the Cavs at the time, and then probably 10 to 15 fairly prominent players across the league, and try to come up to some consensus. And that's how I voted for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Because I have no great way of, and so that this whole, when I saw this on the rundown, I got immediately aggravated.
Yeah, the whole thing. First of all, I hate awards talk in general, but this is so stupid.
But
the fact that we're caring about the odds, this guy's leading and now this guy gets hurt.
They should not be, who votes on the awards? You know, there's no great system, there's no perfect system, but the fact that, like, there's financial incentives in these guys' contracts tied to this stuff.
This means a lot to Evan Mobley.
This is crucial
Huge for Mobley.
to the Cavs' future payrolls.
And by the way, to the bigger picture of the bigger picture of the bigger picture, it's not just basketball. It's all sports.
Yes,
where
it is.
Like, Defensive Player of the Year is basically the guy with the most sacks, unless it's a situation like last year where the guy with the most sacks was Trey Hendrickson. People don't think of him as the best player, and so we got to pick a guy from a different position.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. Baseball's gotten better as defensive analytics have improved a little bit, and they actually do a much better job giving Gold Gloves now than they did years ago. It used to be
off reputation,
right
solely.
And it used to be if you were a good player, you'd win a Gold Glove even if you weren't good defensively. It just used to happen. Now you have like random dudes. You're like, that guy's a Gold Glove.
And Ozzie Smith made acrobatic plays that nobody else could make, and his glove work. Same with Omar. They could do things that so many other players couldn't do, that they were kind of this, entity all by themselves.
Yeah.
But there were still shortstops that played at the time, if you think about it, when Vizquel and when Ozzie Smith played, that were damn good shortstops and maybe more reliable on the everyday ground ball, but they couldn't make the eye-popping highlight play.
I remember in the 80s, the Mets had a shortstop named Rafael Santana who made
him.
every play.
I remember him.
But he couldn't hit, so he never won a Gold Glove.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't matter anymore. It used to matter. The defensive player of the year, especially in football and basketball, complete joke.
But to take this back to the Cavs, and Mike alluded to this on the rundown, there's major financial ramifications tied to this, both for Evan personally.
So it's political then.
Which is stupid.
So his next contract, the max that kicks in next year, is a percentage of the cap. Well, that percentage will be determined by whether or not he makes an All-NBA team, and or if he's named Defensive Player of the Year. If he wins Defensive Player of the Year, it is a significantly we're not going to get lost in the weeds.
It goes from 25% to 30%.
It's bad for the Cavs for him to win that award, which is stupid.
But based on where their cap is and where their cap is going and the aprons and everything else, I mean, Evan Mobley winning Defensive Player of the Year could have a big impact on the Cavs' financial books 3 years from now when they have hard decisions to make on who to keep in.
5% of the payroll in the NBA ends up being a significant number.
It could be, like $10
million. But guys, think about it. How stupid is that?
It is.
It is stupid.
That it's bad for a team for a player to win an award. That makes no sense.
It's just like
baseball.
It's
just like baseball when they get to their incentive.
Bibee finishing second Rookie of the Year starts his clock faster, and it hurts the small market teams.
Players have incentives that if you finish with 30 home runs, then you get
There's a big difference. In baseball, it hurts teams that are unwilling to spend more money. In basketball, you just can't. You can't.
They physically can't spend more because of the cap.
There's
how about
rules
this?
against
How about you fix it by now, because then it's a circumvention.
I think
of the
those
cap.
bonuses should not count against the cap.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I agree.
It circumvents the cap, but that way the team doesn't have to. Hell, if there were certain incentives. And it's happened, by the way. Team could just bench a guy for the last 3 games or 2 games and not allow him to get to his number.
Jason, to put a bow tie on this before we go to Super Chats, do you agree with this part on chase and switches, though? I know that was kind of the second of the layers.
I think you nailed it. Listen, I'll still take Evan Mobley on a guard one-on-one defensively. I think there's certain guys in the league that are going to be able to exploit that, but I don't think it's a high number. Now, having said that, maybe we're totally wrong, and maybe the league has figured this out. We've talked about this with Tyvis in NFL games. When you have something on film, and particularly in the playoffs, if they see it crack, they're going to blow a hole through it. And we'll find out real quick in the playoffs if this is something or if this is nothing. I tend to think this is nothing, and you're talking about really, really good one-on-one players who can get by almost anybody, and I don't think it's a thing. But we'll find out in a few weeks if that's true or not. Mike, agree or disagree?
Once we get to the playoffs.
Listen, the list of guys that can stand in front of James Harden and DeMar DeRozan
it's not a long list.
Is very, very, very short. And Mobley, I think, is about as good as it gets in the league in that big category of staying in front of smaller guards. Right. And it's just difficult. It's in a
First of all, the size disparity is
and it's the same thing with Giannis. And last point, because we got Super Chats. Giannis is incredible defensively. You can attack Giannis off the dribble.
Yep.
What Giannis is damn near impossible to avoid is when you're trying to figure out how to get around Brook Lopez, and while you're trying to figure out how to get your shot over Lopez, Giannis comes out of nowhere and swats that shit 7 rows into the stand.
Mike's throwing a curse in there.
It's 12:57.
It's 12:57. Yeah. All right. Super chats here. Shout out to Evan419 and Daniel Lednick, who each gifted 5 memberships today. Shout out to you guys.
Good job, guys.
We only have 2 super chats. Kevin Miller sent us a super chat with no comment, so shout out to Kevin Miller. The first super chat comes from Eddie Everhart, who says, is there a provision in the Guardians purchase that says the Guardians can't make long contracts? Why not sign a guy for $10 million a year for 2 years and then jump it up to $20 million when Blitzer takes over?
Well, there's nothing in that.
They kind of sort of did that. I don't remember the annual raises, but the Jimenez contract, Zach
took into account.
Zach and I talked about it and said the end of that deal is that's not our problem. That's Blitzer all the way.
The Guardians only Ramirez and now Bibee are the only 2 players that have guaranteed money beyond 2026.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Clase's got an option in 27, and Trevor Stephan has an option in 27. I think Clase's got an option in 27 and 28. But that's it.
All right, next super chat.
It's funny how I used to look at him as a guy that we had long-term control over.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
A couple of
Goes
years
fast.
away.
It goes
Goes really fast.
It's still 4 years with the
No, I know, but he could exercise out.
No, it's at team options.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought, okay.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Well, then, and that's the kind of contract you want.
The Guardians
because if there's a player that
100%.
falls off the cliff in a hurry, it's that one.
Those early contracts, it's always team options. The Guardians never give player options.
I should know that by now because everything benefits them.
Last super chat comes from Bull. Put your thinking cap on for this one. It comes from Dank Nasty Assmaster, friend of the show, who says, "Hey guys, do you think the Bibee extensions means he'll take Taylor Naquin's spot in the starting rotation?"
Tyler
Naquin.
What did I say?
Taylor
Naquin. Yeah, obviously a
Mr.
sarcastic comment there. Dank Nasty Assmaster, but
Dank Nasty. Yeah, no, Tyler Naquin does not have a spot in the rotation, but he'll try to.
Has he pitched yet?
Over under half a
like
game
a spring
pitched
training game? Is he?
Is
he just a non-rostered invitee? Like, what's his status?
I don't know. I don't think he got a major league invite.
No,
so he's probably pitching on the minor league.
They'll assign him to A-ball and
he's you saying over under a half of major league performance ever, or just this year, Mike?
This year, over under.
I'm going to say under this year.
I'll take under too.
I'll give him the over in his career.
For his career, I'll give him the over.
He'll get a shot, maybe.
It's Anthony Ghost. I think it took him a couple of years, and he never really has.
No, but he made an appearance. He made a few appearances. Yeah. He's with somebody else now. Somebody else picked him up.
He throws hard, man. He's intoxicating. He's left-handed, and he can throw it.
Yeah, that's
through a wall.
All right, that's good. We'll see you in overtime.
See ya.
Peace.